And take it away.
So much.
Want me to do?
No.
Welcome, everybody. We're at the, December 2025 meeting Manhattan's Community Board One's Land Use Zoning and Economic Development Committee. I'm Patrick Cannell, now co-chair of the committee. Netta Porchikori is our chair. She'll be directing traffic going forward. So Netta.
Right, we have on our agenda today, we have two items. We have the PSA application 202524 EZ for 86 Warren Street. That's the first.
Presenters are in.
Our presenters are in the room.
Yes.
So
Great.
join us at the table. Give me 1 second and then I'll start your presentation, but introduce yourself and the team in the meanwhile.
Sure. Thank you very much for having us. My name is Eric Palatnik. I'm an attorney and I am representing the Warren Street Hotel. And I really appreciate everybody making the time for us this evening. With you behind me are a whole host of people which represent the engineers from the building. That includes Ernest Lombardo and Sarday, that includes not Ernest Lombardo. Introduce yourself, the engineers.
Sarah.
No, Nidal. Nidal is the project engineer. We have Pavarini McGovern, which is Ernest and Sarday, who are right here. They built the building. And then we have Damien, who's the project architect. And then we also have with us Aaron. Where's Aaron now? Here's Aaron and his partner who are involved in the building as well. Some of the numbers that are involved in it. Also with us is Elise Bolo there, who's an attorney from the office, and Jake, who put together the presentation that you're looking at today. So thank you for having us. If I'll make a brief introduction, if that's okay for you, and then we'll go on from there. We've created something rather novel for you today for the Land Use Committee. It's the first time it's been done in New York City that we're aware of. We've created a presentation that I'm going to let you watch, which explains every single thing that we're doing. And then after the presentation, we're all here to answer any questions. I think it'll be more efficient if we just go right into the presentation and it explains. We've tried to anticipate almost every question we could think of. So it's only 10 minutes, by the way. Well, it is 10 minutes. So.
Thank you.
Eric, this is the first time it's ever been done?
First time it's ever.
Wow.
Just give me a minute.
This one we're giving.
Alphabet. Did you try it in advance? I've got this one and I have this. There's two. You just keep that one. You know, with technology being what it is, you're gonna have to do a little bit of side shuffle until we can resolve this.
I can give you one that wasn't in my hand.
Can you download it?
I haven't, I do, I'll try.
Not many, not enough to last.
In this room.
Will you?
We haven't started.
I got that. This is a BSA application.
It's in addition
Like
to
the
existing.
They can
How
tell.
come you can't do it with the special permit?
Therefore, I doubt it would be more successful for us.
Yeah. My luck.
Wait, use your BSA.
It's not cheap.
The physical copy was not permitted in the zoning.
It's not cheap. We're doing something.
Here, this before.
Accessory genitals building works. So genuine thing.
Ready to do one for a second.
Sure, Jim,
I don't.
in the hotel. We don't, is that, that's one of the best places to go. Like 6 in the morning, the waters and fruit for free.
Not looking good.
I'm looking at you going, what? Never occurred to me in a million years.
You've been to like these great gyms? Oh, many gyms.
Oh, really?
Come to Minnesota Republic, or running to the gym, like.
I'm never on vacation.
Oh, it's yours, same words, I just
I
said
have
that
to take,
view.
I have to
That's a
take
good one.
meetings from there though, you know, I take my meetings.
Yeah, but you give us that great view.
Ah.
You
Passover.
have a place there, or you know,
Just, kind of like a tradition, nice tradition. Coming to,
Add value to it.
it's,
Add value.
it's very, it's gotten very expensive. It's been a long tradition.
This is, we have some.
I don't-
There's that.
Down that work.
No, it is. You ready?
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, look at, let's choose your,
What would you like, introduction?
No.
is the gym in the sky for the? Is the sky gym?
Yeah, yeah. If you, I could, I could use it over there.
As you wish. Oh,
There cannot be this many people for it.
Oh, and it's a wire now. It's a ring.
No, this whole office for people.
The subject of this application is a small proposed enlargement to the 12th floor of the newly constructed Warren Street Hotel, located at 86 Warren Street in Tribeca.
So it's from the auction.
You see if there's a button.
no, no, don't touch those.
No, that
Do
is-
not touch the on it.
No?
Sorry.
We don't want that.
See you on Thursday, what do we have?
From the outside, the building appears complete. But as a result of practical difficulties encountered during construction, which were compounded by unforeseeable circumstances, the inside of the building is missing essential parts of a successful, functional hotel. The purpose of this presentation is to explain how we got here, the exact conditions that gave rise to practical difficulty in developing the site, and why they could not be foreseen nor avoided, and how a small enlargement to the building's 12th floor, which is the subject of this variance application, is the minimum needed for the hotel to succeed.
Danny, could you turn the volume?
The story begins back in 2019 when the hotel's current owner, Firmdale, began planning the new hotel. The design they and their architects came up with, which was subsequently approved by the Department of Buildings, included a total of 4 cellar levels beneath the building. These lower floors were intended for mechanical systems, back-of-house functions, and several amenity spaces, such as a fitness center and meeting and function rooms. None of these is superfluous. Indeed, having these amenities is virtually standard among hotels, regardless of scale or brand. The 4 cellar levels comfortably accommodated these essential elements, reserving above-grade space for a lobby, restaurant, and mainly the hotel's guest rooms and residential units. Soon after excavation began in 2019, the project encountered unusual practical difficulties. The soil and groundwater conditions at 86 Warren were far more unstable than geotechnical investigations suggested, requiring extensive dewatering just to maintain safe excavation. As the application team can explain, the subsurface conditions could not have been predicted with the tools and testing permitted before construction. The unique soil conditions immediately interacted with an unexpected condition in the adjacent building at 80 Warren Street, which was constructed in 1915. That building's foundation wall, which was assumed to be tied into its floor structure above, was in fact floating, meaning it was not connected to the building. This critical structural flaw, which was impossible to know about ahead of time, made the neighboring building begin to move as drilling for the hotel's secant pile wall foundation began. For that reason, all manner of precautions were taken, from installing strapping to continuously monitoring the movement of the adjoining building. As drilling and excavation proceeded, this combination of unique soil instability and the unforeseen condition of the adjacent building continued to cause movement in the structure off 80 Warren Street, far exceeding what would be expected in a typical excavation. Once movement in the neighboring building was detected, the construction at 86 Warren Street was stopped, the cause of the problem investigated, and extensive steps to stabilize nearby buildings completed. These actions were taken out of an abundance of caution, often when the damage being repaired might not have been due to the excavation of the site at all. In fact, over the course of construction, the team performed nearly $500,000 of repairs to 3 surrounding buildings. At 80 Warren Street, they repaired foundation holes and cracks, installed new tie-ins between the wall and floors on all 6 levels, and completed substantial interior repairs totaling well over $330,000. At 92 Warren Street, they waterproofed the entire interior wall adjoining the site and repaired terrace finishes, approximately $42,000. At 160 Chambers Street, they repointed the entire rear facade, repaired windowsills, recalked windows, and installed structural wall straps on every floor, approximately $115,000. All told, the development team spent nearly $500,000 protecting the neighboring properties, much of it addressing long-standing aging conditions, to say nothing of the cost of constructing their own supportive excavation, foundation, and building. These steps demonstrate the seriousness of the site conditions, the professionalism of the project team, and the good faith effort to construct the hotel without harming the neighboring buildings. To control the unstable soil and protect surrounding buildings as the hotel's several subcellars were being excavated, the project's engineers designed a secant pile system. So, with only about half the secant pile wall completed, the project team made the difficult decision to stop further pile drilling and redesign the building to have just one cellar level. At that point, the hotel had already invested over $2.5 million in secant piles that were ultimately abandoned in the ground. Abandoning a foundation system of this scale is extraordinarily rare, and it underscores the uniquely unstable subsurface conditions and the degree to which the site's physical characteristics directly impacted the development of the site. Perhaps more importantly, once they concluded that the secant wall could not be completed, the team was forced to revert to a conventional foundation system. Cellar is now filled entirely with mechanical and back-of-house functions, leaving no room for the basic amenities and operational spaces that were originally planned for the 3 subcellar levels. This loss was the direct result of the site's unique physical conditions, unstable soil, challenging groundwater behavior, and the hidden structural condition of the adjacent building, and was in no way self-created. While these physical issues were unfolding, 2 compounding factors made the situation even worse. First, just as the team encountered all of the problems related to excavating the site, the COVID-19 shutdown halted all non-essential construction, leaving a partially complete foundation and a gaping hole in the ground. Not long after, the city announced new rules requiring a special permit for hotels not already under construction with completed foundations. Leaving the site unbuilt and seeking a variance at that point would have exposed the neighboring buildings to prolonged risk and could have jeopardized the project's zoning status. While these compounding factors do not form the basis of the variance, they help explain why, In the face of unique and unpredictable site conditions, the building was completed before this application was filed. Back to the problem of losing all of that subcellar space. Without the 3 subcellar levels, the hotel lacks a fitness center and any meeting or function spaces. Industry experts confirm that without them, back to the problem. Industry experts confirm that without the 3 subcellar levels, the hotel lacks a fitness center and any meeting or function spaces. These amenities are essential for hotels to remain competitive. Back to the problem. Industry experts confirm that without the 3 subcellar levels, industry experts confirm that without them, hotels' ability to attract guests, generate revenue, and operate sustainably is significantly compromised. Converting guest rooms to make space. To operate at a reasonable level, the hotel simply requires a small amount of additional space, 2,922 square feet to be exact, to replace what was lost. The construction proposed by this application is a minimal single-story enlargement to the hotel's 12th floor, set back from the building's street wall so that it is mostly not visible from the street. This space would contain a small fitness room, a flexible meeting room, and a small zoning-required amenity area. The enlargement is far smaller than the subcellar space that was lost, does not expand the building's footprint, does not increase the number of guest rooms, and would be nearly invisible from public view. It is the least obtrusive and most practical way to restore essential operational space. Financial analysis included with this application shows that the hotel, as built today, cannot achieve a reasonable return because of the extraordinary and unforeseeable costs associated with the site's physical conditions and the permanent loss of 3 subcellars. The proposed addition raises the project only slightly above break-even. This demonstrates that the relief requested is the minimum necessary to address the hardship directly caused by the site's unique conditions. Tribeca's buildings come in all shapes and sizes, and many of them are much taller than the Warren Street Hotel. The proposed 12th floor enlargement is small, set back, and consistent with the scale of neighboring buildings. Moreover, it does not actually increase the height of the building and is lower than the existing rooftop bulkhead. In short, it will not alter the appearance of the building from the street, nor will it adversely affect any of the surrounding buildings. It simply restores basic functionality to the building. The development of the hotel on the site was unavoidably hampered by unique physical conditions, unstable soils, unpredictable groundwater, and a hidden structural deficiency in an adjacent building. These conditions prevented the construction of the 3 approved subcellars and led to millions of dollars in abandoned work and unforeseen repairs to the neighboring buildings. Acting responsibly and in good faith at every step, the development team brought the project safely to completion. But without the space lost underground, the hotel cannot operate with the basic amenities that virtually all hotels require. The small proposed enlargement restores only what is necessary for the hotel to function fully and competitively. It is consistent with neighborhood character and represents the minimum variance needed to address the hardship created by the site's unique physical conditions.
All right, thank you very much for putting up with technology. We apologize. Next time we know we need a more powerful computer. So we're going to show this is struggling. Our computer is working.
It's not the best for an integration.
Great. Work on a new technique. But I think it gets the point across to everybody pretty clearly about why we're here this evening. Warren Street Hotel was designed and built to have every single amenity that you expect when you walk into a hotel anywhere in the country or basically anywhere in the world. What you get is an amenity space that includes a workout room and a meeting space, much like a room we're in right now. And I think we've all come to expect those, whether you're in a Hamptons Inn or whether you're in a hotel of a higher caliber. They had no intention of being here. There was not their intention when they started construction to ask for a variance. The amount of square footage that they're here asking for is 2,921 square feet, which is a very minimal amount of space. The amount of height that they're asking for is 14 feet 6 inches. And as we mentioned in our request, it sets right below the existing bulkhead. So it's really just filling in an existing space. So we'd be happy to answer any further questions that anybody has any further questions. And we have our whole team here with us tonight as well. So we thank you very much for considering this.
What is the variance for though? Like height
The
or
height,
setback?
height and floor area. Right?
Floor area.
Height and floor area are the two things that we're asking for. 2,921 square feet of floor area and 14 feet 6 inches of height.
And the plans were approved with the DOB plan examiner with 3 cellars on it?
Yes, yeah, that's not uncommon, actually 4, a cellar and then 3 sub-cellars.
It's not uncommon for a plan examiner to question a building being 40 feet deep, like 100 feet away from the water?
No, not at all, not at all. I mean, the trade center site, for example, was, I don't know how many feet down the engineers could say. But
Well, that's not subject to
You know,
Department of Buildings. That's a different,
Right,
you
but
know,
no, but
Department of Buildings.
it's
Yeah.
common in New York City for buildings to be constructed with this level of depth for a sub-cellar. And what they'll use is either a bathtub foundation, which we all saw during the trade center, or they'll use, as we ended up reverting to here, a standard typical foundation system.
Rich,
Yes, so, if the building said that there was no increase in height of the building, so why is there a variance, a height variance?
Maybe you go back to one of the slides that shows the section, and the architect is here as well, and we can talk about that a little bit. The building has, at the top of it, it rises up, if you can get to, yeah, that plan was good where you just were. It gives a section. Okay, so you can see the building rises up right now to the 11th floor, and then 12, 13, and 14 are really a bulkhead. 12 is some mechanical space that, you want to explain a little bit?
Mechanical space
Right.
up on top of the water heaters, the air conditioning systems, the water pumps, and the chiller, the green area.
Is the green area, so the blue area, 12, 13, and 14. So if you can go to one that shows it filled in, there's a slide that shows it filled in.
Height.
So you-
Those
they-
don't
they
count
don't
for,
count
for
towards
the height.
So, yep, go to 12, go to one. Filled in. There you go. So if you see the dark blue above the 11 there, those are the 2 squares that we're filling in.
But now it does count as height.
Now it does count as height, but it doesn't exceed, what we're trying to demonstrate is it doesn't exceed, the bulkhead is visible. You can see the bulkhead. It doesn't exceed the bulkhead.
Understood.
Did you come here before us previously?
No,
I'm sorry, it just seems so familiar.
we may have met, but no.
Was there any transfer of air rights when you, built this design?
No.
No transfer of air rights? And when was the building completed and when did you notice you didn't have a gym?
Well, we knew we didn't. We knew we didn't have a gym, as soon as we switched it, as we redesigned everything, which is in, what year did we redesign everything, guys? 2020. So in 2020, we took the gym out. We knew we had to, because we couldn't, that was when, once we started digging in the ground, that was when we discovered that the buildings around us were kind of in crummy shape already. They were, they were fragile. And that's when we realized that the foundation system that we had, which is the secant piles, which you can see everywhere, they go down very deep. So they're building the East River right now, right? The resiliency project, I'm sure you're probably involved in that. If you drive along the FDR Drive, you'll see the secant piles going down right now. They're drilling them right. It's common against, to your point, this is what people do against the water. They go down very deep and they build a wall around the water. In this case, once we started getting down deep, the buildings around us, which are 120 years old, 100 years old, were in horrible condition. You just saw, if you go to one with the holes in it, go to the one that
Yeah,
has holes.
that's where you lost me. It's not common to go down 50 feet around buildings with foundations that don't go that low. So I just feel like for me, it undermines the ask. No one ever should have dreamed of going 50 feet lower than any of the foundations.
There was no way to identify the buildings. The buildings had, and I'll let the engineers speak to it if you can. Nidal, if you want to speak to it for a second.
First, I think would be probably better than having the, no offense intended for you, sir. But let the engineers versus the attorney talk.
Yeah.
More
Right.
truthful.
That's why it's got $3 if you want.
Excavation, we can tile walls, very typical, especially when excavations are in the water. What was special about this particular site is, at some point in time, there used to be buildings on what is now 86 Warren Hotel. And when those buildings were demolished, 40 years before this hotel was designed, approximately, the process of the demolition did not take into account tying the walls of the building to the joists. So what was left for an extended period of time, decades, was a free floating wall of the building. That is what was not expected, because walls are usually connected to the floors. Every floor there are connections. And that is something that is not common, to have a wall freestanding. Then when the work started in the excavation and the walls started to show movement, all of the movement, by the way, was within the OB allowed limits. So the owners and everyone on the team was paying very close attention to make sure those buildings, if they move, are moving within the allowable tolerances and corrective actions are taken in time. And there were engineers representing all of the neighbors looking at every step of the way. So when the movement started to happen, at that point, destructive investigation, which means openings of the interior of ceilings inside of the building with the permission of the building, took place, at which point it became clear that the wall and the ceiling and the floors were disconnected. And that's when an extensive engineering analysis and work was taken to tie the building into the wall, talking specifically about the 80 Warren or 76 Warren. And that was all happening around this time when COVID just kicked in and the zoning was about to change.
I'm sorry, are you a structural engineer or a geotech?
I'm the tutor.
So you're saying that all the reports showed perhaps a range of movement that these buildings can have,
Correct.
meaning that, you know, the situation that was discovered was a possibility at that time.
So we know with any construction, we know that there are some movements that buildings will exhibit. Buildings exhibit movement during changes in seasons, during the summer and the winter.
Sure.
So there are tolerances where in a historic neighborhood, the tolerances are slightly tighter than in a new, for a new building. So all of these were taken into account and are part, and were part of the drawings that were reviewed and approved, not only by the DOD, but also by the engineers representing the neighbors. So we were working within those tolerances, and the building movement was within those tolerances when we discovered that, and not only our team discovered, also the engineers representing the neighbor who were reviewing the plans didn't also know that the wall and the floors and the joists were disconnected. So that was.
So-
Hired another engineering firm to analyze the wall. We had laser sights on all of the buildings, and we do it 30, 40 times a second. Read.
Got so that's when we decided to go to one level up. So, and at that time, we decided to proceed and to opening the hotel, even though we knew that it's not going to work.
Yes, well, at that point, they were committed already. They had already had the lease arrangement with the ownership, which they were committed to on a 99-year lease. They had already committed to financing with the lending institution. They had already dug in the ground. They had already $2.5 million just in the pilings, which they were abandoning at that moment. That's how much everybody was convinced it was gonna work. You're with Pavarini, one of the largest builders in the city. Lee Dow's engineering firm is a very well respected engineering firm. And Stonehill Taylor is a very respected architectural firm. So nobody expected these changes to occur. And at that point, like we were saying, COVID occurred and put financial strain under every project in the city. And at the same time, this is something which your land use committee is probably very well aware of. The special permit came into effect for the hotel special permit, the Bellagio. And what that said is if they didn't have their foundations done in a certain period of time, then they would have to go through a special permit at city planning, which is a 2 to 3 year process. That would have bankrupted the job, would have left a hole in the ground, and would have left the buildings around us with their walls unstable. So the hotel ownership was left in a very difficult decision of whether or not to stop, like we're talking about right now, and leave the hole in the ground, go to the Board of Standards and Appeals, lead their case, and then come back to the job, but they wouldn't be able to because they still would have to make payments on the property the whole time. They wouldn't even be able to cover any of their losses on anything at all. So this difficult decision was made to finish the hotel project and then come back and ask to make.
Which is this meeting.
Which is this meeting, right?
Got it. And the movements that happened, did it cause any issues with the neighboring buildings?
Well, that's-
and services?
I'd be happy to have them explain, who would want to explain if there is anything with the neighbors.
So, yeah, we can explain it.
We're neighbors,
You want to
more
start?
or less here.
Okay, please make sure you introduce yourself.
Yes.
And if you can actually move forward, there are 2 seats at the table. We'd
Yeah,
like
you're welcome to sit here if you want.
here.
So there are 4 of us here from 80 Warren Street. My name is Deborah Treisman. I had the dubious pleasure of living on the ground floor directly adjacent to the construction. It would not have been hard to assess where groundwater was before beginning construction. We flooded, our basement flooded during Hurricane Sandy when the groundwater rose. It's well documented. The level of groundwater was very high. When the construction got started, coming up against the potential lockdown and the loss of the ability to continue construction, Paverini McGovern sped things up. They skipped doing at least 1 test pit that was on their original plans, which would have shown them whether or not the soil adjacent to our building was stable. They just skipped it. Then they began construction and very quickly things started to shift in the building, cracks in walls, windows broken, doors that wouldn't close. Do you want me to continue? Or, okay, there were some intermediate repairs that were done with the idea that full repairs would be done when construction was concluded. Some of those repairs were done in a sloppy way and cracks reopened. The building continued to shift constantly, and we are here 1 year post termination of the construction, almost 1 year, and there is extensive damage to our building, which has not been repaired. During construction, we're particularly opposed to construction on the roof because they had an agreement that allowed them access to the roof of 80 Warren, which they needed in order to build up above. They didn't pay the lease. They haven't paid for the agreement. They put scaffolding on our roof. They created a situation up there which led to flooding. They created a situation between the buildings which led to flooding in our building and I believe in 92 Warren. They still haven't repaired any of this. I don't think our building is about to allow access to our roof, which is still damaged. So I'm not sure how they would do this construction.
Thank you for that.
Are you all involved in litigation?
I will let the board members respond to that.
Not at this point.
I'm not a board member.
But I could add some more color to this.
Please.
Yeah, I'm Paul Lieberman, I also live in the building. And actually in the presentation, they noted that there were sensors on the walls and construction had to stop because they went over the threshold. That's what happened, actually. And when they went over the threshold, our building just cracked. I have a saddle on my door, it snapped. I couldn't get in and out of my door, so they had to move my lock. They couldn't fix the door, so they moved the lock so it would fit into the jamb. The windows in many apartments won't open or close. We actually had security doors, fire doors that we could have So they came in, they did a couple of repairs. They actually fixed my saddle. I don't know why they did that. But the rest they just ignored. And I think as Deborah mentioned, they said they would come back later because the building's still shifting and they didn't want to fix the cracks now because, you know, so it made sense to us. So we let them do what they did. And in de facto, admission that they fixed the stuff is because they knew they did it. We didn't force them to fix these things. We asked them, they saw it, and they fixed these things that happened. But we have flooded my entire my east wall, which is just west of them, east of them. Is you have to scrape it. It has pockets of water that came in through their building. It destroyed my whole wall. You have to scrape it. It has to be repainted. They just ignored it. Had engineers come in. We had insurance companies come in. We had a contractor come in. They estimated probably $300,000 was a ballpark figure of just the repairs that are needed. On top of that, there's access fees that they haven't been paying, which is probably $300,000. So I don't know how we can even consider them to allow them to put something on a roof when they haven't even paid for this. Or did they do more damage? I mean, I can't even believe the request. I don't know how somebody can actually in good faith come to us and say, we want to build another thing. We don't want to fix your thing. And if we screw it up again, then take us to court. I mean, it boggles my mind how they have the audacity to do this in front of everybody.
Thank you.
Just to add one point, when they secured the wall to the building, you know, this good faith effort to put in wall type, they missed 9 times and bored into people's walls.
I had a hole, I could see the river through my apartment. They put 9 holes in it. It was unbelievable. That's the professionalism that they have.
Thank you.
So I have a question. So now, when you're going to do this new construction, right, could you explain to us how this is going to happen? Can the existing structure
Yeah, why don't-
sustain additional new, weight? And, what would be the, procedure for you doing, this construction work in relation to the neighbors?
Who wants to speak to that? And can somebody speak to some of the comments that were just made too?
Yeah, we did have the structural engineer look at the foundations and they will.
Could you come forward and
You have to-
speak a
you have
little
to speak
louder,
louder.
please?
We did have the structural engineer look at the foundations and they will support the addition.
You didn't want
They
to,
did the
you didn't want to file it, you didn't want to file it and see if the DOB or anybody else thought your opinion was.
You don't believe me that I.
No, I believe, excuse me, I believe you, but
You do believe.
yeah,
Well, you
what I
can
don't
someone,
believe
yeah.
is that there's this plan examiner out there that is gonna approve some sort of PAA to, by the way, is this application closed and signed off and all that?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're gonna file a new application? Okay, so all I'm asking is, did you at least pre-file that application with an architect and engineer before you came here? To say that you may be a professional, you may be licensed at everything. But we need to see something with maybe a
Yeah.
stamp by the DOB.
For us to meet here today,
Yep,
we have to file this already. So the DOB has our file.
okay, structural and general construction.
They usually give us what they give to.
No, I'm
you.
just, I mean, look, it's a yes or no.
It's filed.
And
So just for board members, I just want to make it clear, I think hearing from the public, I think there's some information missing that we're gonna need you to come back with. Okay, so we're not gonna do a resolution supporting this BSA tonight by any stroke of the imagination. It was a lot more complicated than I thought it was gonna be, because we have not heard back from the neighbors yet. But quite frankly, it'd be against what the role of the community board is to do, which is to support the community in all aspects of it, to be able to say, yes, we will approve, the BSA and give it to you. You have to deal with the issues that you have already created with the next door neighbors. I don't know how else to phrase that. And pursuant to what Jason is saying, you need to kind of come back with a little bit more for us, right? And when you come back, I would ask you to bring details. right? Are you, it's nice to call it a gym. Does it have an outdoor deck? Is there outdoor dining? Is there a bar up there? Are people outside, inside? What on earth is going on? Because all of that's relevant to what the community response would be. Right?
There is no food and beverage there, but I understand.
Is there an outdoor deck?
There's an outdoor area for residents,
Or who?
residents of the building.
Oh, that's right, because you're now not full hotel. Correct. You're now residential and hotel.
Yes, not exist right now.
Yeah, I remember you were here for that. You were here for that when
They
you
want
came
to
about.
have a liquor license.
You were here for a liquor license and
I
you were here
wasn't,
for
but-
somebody. And I believe you were here for parking in front of the building as well.
Remember this project.
Yeah.
I remember it.
I wasn't there.
Loading zone.
They were, the building and the ownership that you are representing has been before the board a couple other times. A loading zone that was critically important to them and for the liquor license.
Yes,
This is something else.
correct.
Right, we did approve both of the other applications that came before us with conversations with the neighbors and things like that. This application will be no different, but what's disconcerting to me is you need to make whole the neighbors and figure that out, because you're coming back to us saying we have financial hardship because we couldn't dig down 4 levels deep, correct?
Correct.
I'm not sure why you thought in a historic district that would be a fantastic way to go anyway, because you're in a historic district with old buildings around you. So to say that it was shocking, belays some sort of, rational suspect that I would have had when you bought the building, right? The owners leased the building, whatever the case may be. So I think you need to come back with more information and a lot more. We'd be happy to see you in January if you're ready by then, February, whatever works for you, but I think that these kind of conversations, I mean, that's my opinion, and I would close with that.
Council, what are the standards that your applicant and your client needs to meet in order for each of those two variances? So for the FAR variance and for the height variance?
That there's something unique about property, the condition of the property.
Same for both?
Yes.
Okay.
And that what you're seeking is causing a financial hardship. And resolve, or overcome the financial hardship as a result of granting the request. And that the request fits within the character of the neighborhood. And the two final ones are that it's a minimal request, or the most minimal one needed. And that it's not self-created. In other words, you didn't cause the condition component.
As part of the financial hardship argument, as I heard it anyway, and looked at the economics slide that you had, is that argument effectively, if we don't get this variance, the project will go bankrupt, we're going under?
That's the essential nature of the.
So I just want to ask the neighbors, do you all accept that premise in the sense that if this were to be denied, is that, I'm not, in fact, don't even answer me, just think about it. Is it a better thing if this project goes into bankruptcy? Does that get you guys where you need to be? Or is it better if they're able to finish the project and then help you guys get recompense for what happened to you?
I mean, frankly, they finished the project a year ago and have shown no signs of willingness to repair.
Got it.
Also, I would like to say that they've been very unresponsive to our communications. Multiple of our board members have tried to reach out to them in various ways. And we've been getting the runaround.
So are you a resident?
Yes, I'm a resident, also a board member of 80 Warren Street. My name is Ann Simon.
So just, if I may, so furthering on Tammy's comments, which I heartily concur, is I wouldn't just want information from you. I would want a joint, I would certainly prefer to see you and the neighbors have some agreement that you can present to us that they accept and you accept, that we could support, that would allow this project to go forward. Not just commitments, because we hear those commitments have not been met. We want to understand that the neighbors are in agreement.
Understood.
Laura has her hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to second what Tammy said about excavating in a historic district and knowing there's so much data around about the groundwater and the foundations of these buildings. But also, like, what is the plan to make the affected buildings whole, like to finish the repairs and compensate those buildings?
There, I'd like to know.
Thanks.
Just one more question. So you may have answered this, but I'm not
Wait,
sure.
but did you, I don't understand. I got an email from somebody who lives at 80 Warren and she said that you haven't paid for everything yet. That there's still outstanding issues.
It was just suggested that they should come up with an agreement with the 80 Warren neighbors on how to remedy the situation.
Right,
And
yeah, I
then-
heard that. Okay. All right. Okay.
So I wanted to know why you're coming to us now and not sooner when you knew you needed this. Therefore, I don't know if you answered that, but
I did, but there's a lot of information. This whole reason was the hotel special permit was going on at the time, which required that hotels go to the city for a special permit. They didn't have a completed foundation by, I think it was, I'm not sure what the date was, but it was in the middle of all, I think, October of 2021. So if we didn't have our foundation done before that, we would have had to end up in the ULURP process for 2 years, which would have further compounded all the problems for the application. So we had COVID deadlines, we had that going on, we had these conditions. So that's why they made the decision. They could have stopped right then with the hole in the ground and gone for the ULURP, and everything would have been frozen at that point with what we were talking about next door. They weren't trying to mess everybody up next door as badly as the allegations are today. And I don't think they anticipated it was gonna be where we are today. So they made the decision to continue.
What about the intervening 4 years then?
Yeah, that's my question, exactly.
You just said that, as long as the foundation was completed before October of 2021, over 4 years ago. Presumably the race was on to get the foundation complete so that you didn't.
So, yes, I understand. So
What happened in that intervening 4 years? You built the building, but you can walk and chew gum and come.
then potentially they could have, we were retained a year and a half ago. We started the application immediately. I don't know what happened in a year and a half in between, but we were retained a year and a half ago.
So I guess my question builds on what Patrick is saying. There's something missing for me here, for hardship, because I guess the question I'm looking to understand when it came before us, and one of the other times was the switch to, a large portion of residential, long-term residential versus hotel, which is market-driven. Was that a financial choice to make to stabilize the hotel? And if so, how long have you been doing it? Has it been successful? What's the long-term prospects of that? Because that was a large portion of the reasoning to come to us to get a loading dock. And load in and drop off and things like that. So I'm a little.
You're right to ask it and I'll find out.
But we need to understand you were just retained a year and a half ago. But you're speaking here for your client, you should know what happened in that time. So if you don't have that information now, fine, but when we come back in January, and your client can speak for themselves and speak for your client, but it's a little what.
Yeah, no, I'm taking notes on everything you're saying. I understand the concerns of the neighbors and.
When I last asked my question, we established that you realized you didn't have a gym in your proposal. Did you at all consider fewer hotel rooms or smaller residential?
They did consider fewer hotel rooms or smaller residential, but that would have thrown the economics off of the hotel in other ways. So it was really a matter of the income production comes from the hotel rooms. So to take out the hotel rooms to create the gym space wasn't necessarily a viable solution.
When you're telling us you need the gym for the financials.
You need the gym as an amenity when people come to a hotel. It's something that people like to have.
There are other gyms in the area.
There are, but I mean, on a night like tonight, for example, if you're coming down or you're at a hotel, the last thing you really want to do is walk outside or tell your guests, go walk outside. And the meeting space, I mean, we've all been to, I'm sure you've been to motels and hotels that have little conference rooms and meeting spaces. It's an amenity that's people very much look for when they go to a.
Is it a business center and a meeting space with a table in it? or is it an event space? Those are two very
It's
different.
only 2,000 square feet. We'll show you the floor
Two
plan.
thousand square feet is 200 people standing up at a cocktail party.
It's spread over 2 rooms, 2 portions of the room. I saw the elevator bulkhead, and it's a flex space to some extent, but it's not a gigantic meeting space by any stretch. What's the most amount of people that could fit with the architect? What's the most amount of people that could fit in the space up top?
I would have to look, I don't know.
So it's not a business center type of thing,
Well,
right?
but that's the
Yeah,
question
right.
is, right, you need to come back, and when you come back, we wanna see what the plans are for both the gym and for the event space. Event space is event space. You can host a party. If it's 1,000 people for 1,000 square feet, that's a party for 100 people, a cocktail party standing up. And if that has an outdoor deck to it, that's an impact on the neighbors as well. So, and that space is eligible to be used potentially as a private club for the residents. So there's a lot of experience that we have in this community for understanding exactly what that's going to be. And we want to see the drawings because I want to understand what FF&E are in there that you're building out.
Understood.
We say, from the- just speaking for myself, as a consumer in the hotel, having a gym and having a meeting room is great. You have to, before doing that, you have to make amends to our building. Because our roof is still damaged, we have people who can't open doors, and we've gotten no communication over the last few years. And so we are not very happy. Now, having a gym and having a meeting space, that's great. And we wish you would be able to do it and to make a profit. But before that can happen, you have to make amends with the buildings that you've damaged.
Thank you for that.
Yes.
Well, I just have a question. Procedurally, are you just checking off the box that you've been to the community board? Or do you really need us to do something before you proceed?
Well, as a general rule, the community board is advisory. The board of standard appeals takes your comments, your recommendations extremely seriously. So, no, we're here to learn what the concerns
So
are.
you can't
And
do
we
anything.
brought the entire team here to hear, they're all behind you.
This cannot advance until the community board has.
Until the community board takes a vote on it, correct?
Thank you.
All right.
And by the way, we're not under a time pressure. We're not on any scheduled dates anywhere. We're here to meet with you, work it out while we're going to the board of standard appeals.
Unfortunately, we're under a time pressure.
I know you are, that's what
We
I'm saying.
can't open
We're
doors.
here to spend time to work out.
Thank you.
We would love to have you come back. I'm not gonna suggest, I'm gonna let Netta make a final decision on this, but as chair of the board, I would say don't come in January until you've made restitution and figured out what the deal with the neighbors are. Because that's gonna be the first question before we look at any plans, before we look at anything else, to make whole the promises that you had already made to the neighbors.
Okay. We'll talk.
I'm sorry, you said you'll talk to them?
We will, we'll be in touch.
Seriously.
Seriously.
Otherwise, we will fight for them to the last ball.
I'm sensitive.
Okay, good, yeah, good, thank you.
There's a reason for that.
That's part of being a
Okay.
good neighbor.
Look forward to that.
Understood.
Thank you for the
Right.
presentation.
Thank you very
Number
much.
number two, thank you all.
Let's give
Thank you.
let's give that chance to-
I mean,
Second one, really,
yeah, rush to not get divorced, so like everybody else.
Hey, you left me last time at that monthly meeting in Alice.
Oh, about.
For some reason, people are so concerned. Waiting.
I need you to show some force because they think they can walk all over.
Thank you.
They changed 3 words and we
Like your, just me.
I
I did.
I know, you did a great job. So good with it.
They will live off the street farms.
Well, so I don't want to perform on this. Thank you. I will.
Yes.
Thank
Thank you so much.
Do you guys have a copy of their presentation?
Yeah, works for JLL. So. You know. Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, but it's.
Ask, do you know how many are currently online?
I can tell you in just a second.
Okay.
We have 3 large copies of their presentation from 86 Warren, so if anybody would like one, feel free. We have a total of 26 people online.
Okay.
I have moved over almost everybody for you.
That was on that list.
That was on
There
the
should also be a Shopee and a BMO.
Shachi, I found.
Okay.
I will tell you that I don't see Jeff and I don't see Jacob.
Jeff is here with.
No.
Oh, Jeff.
Our bullets. Do you want me to move this?
Start on
in?
I'll just ask Jeff and Jacob to raise their hand.
Emails last name, so we'll kind of promise.
BMO I found.
People or?
Okay, great.
But I will, Jeff Margolis is not here and neither is Jacob Russell.
Okay.
Right.
Keep going. How's that?
Wait, I found Jeff. There he is. Okay, he was just Jeff M. All right, he's moved. Thank you, Jeff, for raising your hand. I appreciate that. That leaves Jacob Russell as the only,
Hi, I'm texting him.
oh,
Hi, sorry, I see marked as a presenter.
Yeah. Thank you, then you're here. Great.
Would it be okay if the presenters for this simply set up a disabled?
I would appreciate you if you did. We love that about you. I have. Tell me if you would like me to share your slides.
Yes, please. Would you like to, you want me?
Is there a clicker? Would you like, how would you like us to advance them?
Sometimes it works. Please come sit over here. You're gonna put the clicker towards here. Right? And
That's what the receiver is?
If you want to move to the back, these seats.
Tammy, if you also see, Nina Gladstone also needs to be moved over as a presenter or a panelist if possible.
it doesn't always work, so, you would be very easy to say next slide, and I'm happy to do that for you. Okay, let me see. What I can do.
Well, that's good. Nina, if you can hear us, raise your hand.
She moved, I moved her.
Oh, okay, you should be moved over already. Thanks, Tammy.
You're welcome. Yours was much easier.
We didn't use it.
So let's see and hope that this one works.
Okay, I'm just gonna give it a little.
And that moves. Okay. I can do next slide. I think it's not working.
You know, I don't think there's, we're special, I should.
It's here.
It's supposed to be here, so if it's not working, don't worry, it's not. Sometimes it's a better.
Right, good evening, everyone. I'm Aman Krishan. I'm an architect with HOK Architects and I'm a design principal, leading the project. I have with me Autumn Visconti. She is our regional leader for landscape design and landscape architect. I also have Jeff Goodale, who's our director of justice and civic projects at HOK Architects. And of course, we have Lauren, who's our community outreach manager.
We also have a number of folks, obviously, who are online and will help during Q&A. We have representatives from City Hall, the Department of Correction, and DDC, who are all here and available for questions.
Everyone in the room is from HOK.
I'm with the AHJV. We're a program management consultant on behalf of DDC.
Got it. Okay.
I'll just give everybody a chance to see the room because. Let's try this one again. Okay.
So let's go to the next slide. So we're here to walk you through the design for the Borough-based Jails Manhattan facility. We have updated our design since we met with the community in October, so we have some minor updates to share with you. We're also highlighting, we've gone back, we looked at the peer review that was, that some of the members of the community board participated in, and we're also highlighting where we have responded to the peer review comments. But essentially, the updates to the design respond to feedback that we've been receiving from the community itself. Next.
Is this one today?
You go. So we just wanted to start with our community engagement process. It's fine, we can stay with this place. So we will be going to the Public Design Commission in December, mid-December, for the conceptual submission of the project. We've undertaken 2 community workshops, one in August and one in October. We also met with a selected group in the summer. We hosted a minority and women-owned business seminar to bring awareness to the community so they might participate in the project. We are aiming for a community construction meeting. So along these meetings, these sessions are really about the design phase and the design project. We're also undertaking a community construction engagement process. So that's going to begin in January of 2026. And we're going to be undertaking that throughout the duration of the design and construction project. So we're going to come back to the community in spring next year, and then likely winter 26, 27 again. So with 2 more community workshops and 2 more times we're going to come back to. Next. So we take the feedback that we're receiving from the community and all various stakeholders very, very seriously. All feedback is documented. We then analyze that through a data-driven process to understand which aspects community is most interested in. However, we are responding to every comment that the community provides. So in the second workshop, we provided handouts with responses to comments on every question the community had in the first workshop. We're going to continue to do that. We're going to come back with those handouts in March. But we also take that, we've got some graphs that we're going to share with you, so that really highlights the community's concern and where input into design needs to be focused on. So there is sort of a process through how we're tracking community's feedback. Okay, next. Right, next. So for the Manhattan facility, our design is grounded in the idea of dignity and respect. This is a civic building, and our approach to that is in humanizing the space, bringing in natural light, providing access to programs and education. Next. This, a little bit of context about the site. The site is on the northern end of the civic district, in that it ties into the identity of the civic district and the other buildings that are located around Foley Square, including this one. It is on the north and east, surrounded by neighborhoods of Chinatown, Little Italy, and Tribeca. So they're two very, very different, distinct characteristics of neighborhood. And the building wants to respond to both of them and create a connection between both of them. Next. Just some information about the site. So here what we're looking at is the permitted building footprint on the ground floor. Y Street Pedestrian Arcade is a connector between Center Street and Baxter Street. Based on community feedback that we've heard, we shifted the entrance to the parking. Those are the 2 little red arrows that you see on the left-hand side onto Center Street. So there's no access from Baxter, only from Center Street. Similarly, the Sally Port driveway, which is proposed between the new facility and the criminal courts, The entrance is on Center Street and the exit is on Baxter Street, and that's also in direct response to feedback from the community itself. The main entrances to the facility are the two larger red arrows along Center Street. And then what you see in the black arrows are entrances to community or retail spaces that integrate the ground floor into the rest of the neighborhood. Next. At the ground floor, what we're looking, corresponding to these entrances, the main public lobby and the staff lobby will be facing Center Street. Along Baxter Street and White Street Arcade are activated by community or retail spaces that really sort of activate the ground floor and tie it into the neighborhood. White Street Arcade also becomes this incredibly important connector that connects the important public spaces of Columbus Park and Collect Pond Park. Operational spaces of Sallyport and Loading Dock are located off of the driveway. All of those functions are held with, all of the vehicle maneuvering is held within the Sallyport driveway space itself. Next. So we're just going to shift to public realm, and Autumn's going to walk us through our landscape strategy here.
Sure. Thanks, Aman. So since our first or second community design workshop, you'll see here in the bar graphs here, we've updated it, and the darker green highlights kind of the bulk of the comments that we've heard both online and during the workshop. So all of our design updates presented tonight are incorporating these comments. So we'll walk through those, which with each portion of the presentation, from building to landscape and beyond.
A light green?
That's from the first community design workshop. So it's a compounded bar graph, and we'll continue to use this mechanism to show how the design evolves and how we're capturing all comments over the next year. So from where do you go back? So just to summarize what we heard in the last go around, there was a lot of concerns about safety and security within the arcade. That's in particular kind of identity to the potential prolonged loitering that could happen within the arcade. There was also a lot of concerns about better understanding the light and shadow aspects of the site. So we're including some additional studies to show that. Also, there was a lot of requests for flexible programming space within the arcade. So we have an update on that as well. And then the rest was kind of identifying needs for additional visuals, getting a better sense of what the overall materiality, look and feel is like, and the overall experience at the ground level, or kind of with eye level views. Next. So I'll just walk us through some of these key takeaways of what we heard that was kind of shown on the bar graphs. So a lot of requests for flexible programming use. There was kind of pointed requests for reducing the amount of seating within the kind of overall landscape design. Also providing additional studies to better understand daylight, and then additional information about the types of trees and planting species that we're beginning to integrate that respond to all the climatic conditions of the site. Also including additional renderings, which we're going to share with you tonight. Next. I forgot to add some of the asterisks in some of these responses. Also highlight our design responses to some of the peer review comments that were previously received. So we're folding all the comments into our design update. Implementing some of these key takeaways from all the conversations that we've had, we are providing flexible program areas within the arcade, and we'll show that through a couple of diagrams and some renderings. We are reducing some of the seat walls in terms of the widths. So we're still promoting as much planting as possible, but just, skinnying up the widths of those walls. So we're preventing seating in certain areas, but maintaining seating that face flexible programming spaces within the arcade. And then we're also providing additional details on our planting and understory palette. And Aman previously spoke to this. The facility has a designated driveway within the site that acts as access only to the Sallyport and the below grade parking for authorized vehicles only. That was a continuing comment from community workshops. Next. So taking all the comments into mind, we are always revisiting our public realm goals and objectives. We are often reiterating this as with every step in the process of design. So really trying to enhance as much open space to the sky at the entrance, generous dimensions within the arcade, sufficient lighting. This supplements the concerns about safety and security, comfortable seating wherever they're pointed to, as much greenery as possible, specifically within the pockets of light that's provided, and then activating the storefront edges within the arcade as much as possible. Again, these all feed into the kind of need to create a safe and welcoming environment that feels easy to walk through while not feeling any kind of threat or danger. Next. So looking at the kind of hierarchy of streets within the context of the building and the site, the White Street Arcade really does kind of stitch together these two different type of street typologies. So Center Street acts as kind of a regional corridor, while Baxter acts as a more of a neighborhood connector. So really blending two different scales of streetscape typologies within our arcade space. Next slide highlights the importance of this kind of connectivity in providing a seamless connection between the two parks, specifically as it creates safer pedestrian crossings, safer pedestrian access through the arcade, and then visual connections to the open space across the street. Next. So part of our design update is really refining opportunities for flexible program uses within this kind of spine of landscape planting and amenities. So what we've done is we really wanted to maintain clear paths for walkability on the retail frontage side of the arcade. So really activating the facade of the arcade as much as possible, and providing clear path widths for ease of movement, and reducing the seating that faces the retail frontage. So what we want to do is really take the seating and face it towards the program use spaces. So that's reducing seating, but also directing them towards potential uses within the arcade itself. Some of these program areas include informal opportunities for small performances that's kind of centered towards Baxter Street end of the arcade. You'll see on the diagram and on the top right. So small kind of gathering space with some tiered seating. This is an opportunity to kind of create some of that vibrant programmatic opportunities that's connected into Columbus Park and really drawing that into the arcade space. As you move closer into the arcade, we have designated seating for additional gaming tables or social interaction. Again, taking some of the landscape vernacular from the Columbus Park and pulling that further into the arcade. And then within the central portion of the arcade where there's not a lot of daylight, we want that to be as flexible as a plaza-like setting for potential activities or program elements that can be further used in the future. So zooming a little bit back out, this is how the arcade is nested within the two streetscape designs. Again, walking through design from the upper portion of the site clockwise, we have a loading and unloading zone that faces the front of the community or retail space on Baxter. As you turn into the arcade, we're promoting a curb bump out to really create a safer pedestrian crossing for those that are entering Columbus Park, which is up on the upper right-hand portion of the site plan. You're greeted with a potential activity zone, and then as soon as you walk into the arcade with this spine of planters and seating, you have different programmatic opportunities along that central spine. Moving further down towards Center Street, there's a little bit more of a formal seating arrangement as it interacts with some of the planters, and then a stepped terrace planting that complements the entrance of the building with abundant streetscape planting along the entire curb face of Center Street. We're also providing security design that's all implemented into the planters, so it doesn't feel like Bollard City along the entire front of the facility. We're using reinforced concrete walls that double as site furnishings that are crash rated, so it also shows kind of acts like a civic amenity, and then using a bicycle racks as much as possible that complement the adjacent Center Street bikeway corridor. Next. So we're just gonna do a little bit of a visual walkthrough. So this is kind of the overall look and feel in the central part of the arcade. Again, you can see the planter walls are reduced in thickness to eliminate seating along all edges of the walls and really directing those inwards towards the program areas to really activate those spaces as well. Next.
So has this changed that it's accurate to what you just said the changes were?
Yes, yeah, these are all updated renders since the last community design workshop. To further influence our planting palette, which again is still the early stages of the design project, and we're beginning to develop a little bit more of a robust planting and palette approach, but this is just the foundations of our research. Really studying the seasonal extremes of our site. We are gaining a lot of sunlight during the shoulder seasons, which is great, fall and spring. And then in the winter is the dormant season, so there's little to no daylight during the solstice times. Next. So again, kind of a conceptual foundation for our landscape planting palette, utilizing full shade species as much as possible, and this kind of more of the shoulder areas of the daylight analysis, and then closer towards the streetscape where you receive abundant daylight, we are using more flowering species that are full sun tolerant species. Next. Yes, please. Thank you. There was a request for a before and after from the community, before being the design that was previously presented to the community at our second design workshop, which is the image on the left. Our previous design iteration was taking all the landscape and seating and putting that against the facade and retail spaces. Our biggest update since then, which was presented at the last community design workshop, was taking that and inverting the approach of the past, the arcade, where you have this green spine that acts as the kind of central driver for program space on the middle of the arcade, and really using pedestrian movement as a way to activate the facade. This also captures a lot of the available daylight for planting strategies. Next. So some of our updates and design responses we've kind of numbered on the right. So I think just to call out some of our bigger updates is really about the planter walls, having seating that's focused on the central spine of the arcade, and then reducing the long runs of seating along those edges, so really maintaining movability or walkability. And then also providing flexible spaces for programming in between each of those planters. Next. So now we're at ground level. So this is the front entrance of the facility. So here you can see a terrace landscape that helps break down the scale of the public realm at the streetscape level to the entrance of the facility itself, which is raised, and then integrating as much security design, the kind of bollards and seat wall system into the planted landscape along the curb line to really create this kind of serene sense of enclosure, or this kind of more smaller human scale experience as you move along the streetscape. Next.
Just give me one sec.
Great. Okay, so this is walking further down. We're still on Center Street here, but we're looking in towards the arcade. So you can see some of the planters spilling out into the public right of way, where you have benches that are facing inwards, and the planters that are raised to capture as much planting in the available sunlit areas of the arcade. Thanks. So this is in the arcade looking towards Baxter Street. You know, overall a different kind of look and feel as we're facing towards Baxter Street than towards Center. So you're really beginning to see some more of the kind of programmatic activity happening within the spine. And then highlighting some of these activities, which is the game board tables that are in between the planters, and really just kind of highlighting the updated seat wall design, which is now just a skinny planter wall along the edge. Again, this is kind of earlier in the design, so we'll begin to show features, gate deterrents, those kind of level of details as we progress the design. So this is at the end of the arcade where it bookends at Baxter. So really opening up the space and using this as a kind of like a informal public stage setting where people can gather, watch small performances. This was a request from the community itself, where we wanted to really pull some of that vibrant activity from Columbus Park and have an opportunity to activate the beginning of the arcade as it fronts Baxter Street. Next. And this is a view along Baxter Street, a new view, showing this kind of look and feel. Again, it's a smaller sidewalk, so we really wanted to think about the sense of scale that you have here, but really thinking about providing as much planting as possible, but also being cognizant of the amount of pedestrian use that will happen along Baxter Street. So really thinking about the positioning of a loading area to allow for ease of movement for people to cross into Baxter, from Baxter Street onto the sidewalk as possible. And the back to Amat.
As we come out to the architecture and the exterior design of the building, so we heard from the community about the neighborhood context and how the building fits into that, the impact of massing on some shadows around the building, the materiality and of the context and how we respond to that. And there were some requests for additional visuals, including showing different times and seasons, which we've got, and also you've saw through the public realm the before and afters to really understand where the design was and how it has progressed. So if we go to the next slide. The key takeaways are summarized here in the identifying the neighborhood's identity being reflected through the design, demonstrating the shadows and particularly its impact on Columbus Park, the materiality of the building to avoid excessive use of glass and match the civic buildings and the neighborhood buildings, particularly the vibrant colors of Chinatown, integrate the community and retail spaces into the neighborhood, and then the visuals that I just talked about. So next. We are responding to that. We will illustrate through the renderings how we have studied in detail both the civic context and the neighborhood context and how the design is responding to that. We've got some additional views and shadow studies. We are working within the permitted ULURP envelope and breaking the mass down of the building and scaling it down. It's important for the building, like I said initially, to relate to both the civic context and the neighborhood context at different scales, and we continue the study to do that. Right, next. So here's the aerial view of the site. We're north and we're looking southwest. To the south of the site is the larger buildings of the civic district. They're large in plan. They're also much taller. To the north and the east are the much finer grain neighborhood scale of Chinatown and the buildings. So responding to both of those aspects is really important for us. Next. So we start by looking at the permitted ULURP envelope that was approved in 2019. Next. Our central approach is to take the White Street Arcade, which is in fact a New York City street west of the site. ULURP requires White Street to be 35 feet, but we feel very strongly that it needs to be much wider than that. So we have widened it to 55 feet, 50 feet, and registered it vertically up through the building. Next. Using a similar strategy on the northwest side enables us to essentially divide the building into 4 quadrants. Once we do that, we're able to then lower and calibrate the height of the building down towards the lower buildings on the north and the east side. So we're tallest on the south side next to the courthouse. We are lower than the courthouse, approximately about 17 feet lower than the tallest point of the courthouse. Above White Street Passage, is the lowest part of the building, so we really distinguish the north and the south aspects into separate building forms to break the scale of the mass down. And then to the northeast is the lower parts of the building, which sort of step down 30 feet from the tallest part. Next.
Can you explain though how much taller you are than the building north and south of you? That's, I guess that's a measurement I don't understand when looking at it. So where your number 3 is.
So what we're calling out as number 3 is the datum, which is the tallest part of the courthouse, the Pinole Courthouse.
We're that tiny little spire.
Yeah, so that's 17 feet taller than our tallest part. So we're minus 17 feet from that, which is 295 plus 40.
And about the smaller buildings that are at the foreground.
And Chungpok, how much taller are you than Chungpok?
We're significantly taller than Chungpok. I don't have the elevation measure from the same average curve level off the top of my head there, but significantly taller.
And how much taller are you? You're pointing to that tiny little part of 3, right? You're talking about the corner of the courthouse building. That is a tiny little aspect, almost like the top of our building here. The bulk of the courthouse building is significantly lower. As you show in your drawing, how much taller than the average part of the courthouse building are you?
Well, the courthouse has multiple tiers, right? So it has a significant number of different heights. So I would not know how to calculate the average of that.
Even if you took it down to, you're measuring it from the absolute pinnacle, correct?
Yes.
It's a pinpoint at the top of what is ostensibly a pyramid, right? The base of that pyramid, which is the highest bulk part.
Right. We could double check that number and get back to you.
Because that's what it feels. No one's gonna compare it to the pinnacle.
Right, but I will reiterate that we're within the permitted Europe envelope. We are significantly reduced what the envelope permitted us to do. We have 1040 beds, which is the program of the project that needs to fit within that envelope. It needs to balance the requirements for the housing for people in custody, the building support spaces, the programs and educations that are correspond to the Borough-based jails program and the vision for the Borough-based jail system. So there's a significant amount of program that needs to fit within the envelope. So balancing what needs to fit within the envelope, how much of that we can carve, that's where we are. We are on the lower part of the project at the podium scale of the project, again, responding to the scale of the neighborhood. The buildings across the street of Chinatown or across Baxter Street is essentially registering the height of the lower part of the volume. So when you're walking on the street, that's the street experience that predominantly dominates. The upper part of the building sets back of that street. We're also registering the podium of the courthouse and the horizontal datums that come across that. So sort of, through all of these various strategies, knitting it into various ways back into the context and the neighborhood. Next. And in terms of when we carve the vertical registry of White Street vertically up through the building, breaking it into the 4 quadrants, that essentially is a strategy that the courthouse started by the 3 volumes that the courthouse expresses. So continuing that same idea of a vertical volume, a void and vertical volume just sort of reinforces that sense of verticality and civic rhythm along the street experience.
About the chunks you haven't highlighted.
So that's the same as the recess within the courthouse as well. Right, so the reason why the courthouse appears vertical and tall is because you've got these projecting volumes that are closer to the street. And then the volume behind that we've also not highlighted in the court sets back. So in the White Street is the same strategy, that the volume sets back, so your perception along the street and the civic rhythm is very similar in its strategy to the courthouse. Okay, next. And in setting back that White Street volume, it allows us to bring daylight into a White Street arcade, which is what enables a whole host of the planting that Autumn just talked about. Next. And on the left-hand side, you're looking at a plan from the roof level. So greater than 50% of White Street is open to the sky. So what you're seeing in gray is the only overhead part. All the white is in fact open to sky. And on the right-hand side, the section sort of illustrates the scale of experience in White Street and the daylight penetration. Later on, we've got some renderings that actually show you the daylight coming into White Street. Next. So here is just a comparison of along the top row is the permitted ULURP massing, and the current massing is along the bottom row. But what we really wanted to illustrate is the shadows during the two extremes, the summer solstice and the winter solstice. Throughout the day, there was in particular concern about shadows on Columbus Park. And as you can see, it's the orientation of the building. It does not really cast shadows on Columbus Park, which is highlighted in the green dotted line. Right, next.
Shadows go to Columbus and go to Collect Pond, which is the other park that you referenced.
So you can see in the most extreme condition, which would be 9 a.m. on the summer solstice, we're not even coming to the edge of Collect Pond. Maybe before 9, we'll flip an edge, but that's about it. And in talking to the exterior design and materiality of the building, so it's looking at studying the civic context, the sense of volume that the civic buildings express, the vertical expression they have, not just of the columns, but also how they combine the windows to express the verticality of the opaque versus the open aspects. Next. So as we look at the materials for a part of the building, which we want to relate the bulk of the building to the civic district. It is a civic building. It needs to be part of the family of building civic district. We've sort of selected materials. We went to the site and we've, this is just 3 examples of the buildings that we compare with what it, in sun condition and shade condition, what materials start to match really closely to it. So that helps us hold down what colors and materials we're actually going to be proposing. Next. And then similarly for the neighborhood, we've studied the sense of what is the proportion of the building, the 20 feet, 30-foot rhythm of the tenement buildings that repeats itself, the rhythm of the fenestration, the scale of the fenestration, the fact that it's got 3-dimensionality, there's a lot of sculptural quality to it, the ground floor retailing, the horizontal awning, and the material and vibrant colors of Chinatown and how we replicate that. So next. So just in terms of materiality, we did the same thing. We, narrowed down a palette of materials and colors. We went to the site to various buildings within Chinatown, compared them to, sort of start to build a story and palette that will work with the Chinatown buildings. Next. So we're bringing both of those stories together, but I will start with the neighborhood story first here. So we're standing on Baxter Street. We're looking south. So you're seeing the existing Chinatown buildings on the left-hand side, and then on the right-hand side, We're replicating through a undulating facade, we're replicating some of that textural three-dimensional quality that the Chinatown buildings have. The sense and scale of the brick in the neighborhood. There's texture to it. We match the color pretty closely, trying to get there. We heard from the community, they wanted a lot of warm materiality. So those are the elements that we are incorporating within the building here. Next. So we are now on the west side, on the Center Street side. We wanted to show you what we had submitted in the proposal design that some of the members of the community board participated in the peer review. So what you see on the left-hand side is in the proposal, and on the right-hand side, the design as it has currently evolved. There's a significant amount of changes. If you go to the next slide, they include. We're on Center. We're on Center. We're looking north here. Of course, we've changed the materiality very significantly. There was a whole host of comments in the peer review about materiality, and as you saw, we're very carefully calibrating it to both the civic and neighborhood context. The lower part of the project responds to the neighborhood context, which is your street level experience, which is really where you will experience the buildings the most. The upper part is part of the civic district building and its civic nature. The massing is very different from what it used to be. We've really reduced it on White Street to bring that daylight and reduce the scale down. On White Street, we've included that undulating facade that breaks the texture and scale across the building. Next. So here's a view. We're still on Center Street. We're now standing in Collect Ponds a little bit further back. And the idea that there were some questions in the peer review as well, talking about how you would relate to the courthouse, and we talked about the vertical rhythm. So you're seeing the vertical volumes of the courthouse on the right-hand side, and those vertical volumes are being expressed similarly through our building as well. So carrying that language in the volume, but also the vertical banding of the windows in the courthouse, and a very similar expression of how that works as a modern interpretation for the Manhattan facility. Next. Again, we're still on Center Street. We've gone closer to the building, so you're looking at the main entrance to the facility, which is the most glazed component of the building itself, marking very clearly the entrance to the facility, and clear wayfinding. On the right-hand side of the image is a view into the White Street Arcade, where you're starting to see retail or community spaces being called out with glazing that's balanced with the warm material to activate the street. So it's really important what Autumn talked about, the clear paths of walking next to the retail. It's really making this a successful New York City street, how New York City a typical street works. You have retail right next to the sidewalk. That's really the experience that continues through the site. Next. On the image on the right-hand side, we're standing on White Street west of the site. So you can see the width of White Street as it is on the west is what goes through the site. So we're broadening it from 35 feet to 50 feet. It's the continuation of the New York City street as it goes through it, but it also illustrates the separation of the north wing and the south wing of the building as two completely distinct masses. A similar strategy on the north side, on the in the image in the center of the building, you're standing on Center, now looking south, you're looking at the north side, so sort of separating the building mass into two different distinct identities. Next. A view from Columbus Park itself in here. Again, illustrating White Street Arcade in separating the north and south wings, and also the stepping down from the taller part of the building towards the north, which is about 30 feet short of there. Next.
But this is where I point and note to you. The top of the courthouse building is immaterial for height and bulk. based on its setback and what it is, it's the pin at the top. When you look at this from community perspective and human scale, it's far outshadows the park house. Far outshadows.
The street experience, however, is scaled down to the podium levels, which come out to the street level itself. The taller part of the building does step back, so it does have that sense of breaking the scale down as it comes down to the street itself. So here, again, the sense of bringing that materiality, the warm material, the scale, the texture down to the street level, balancing the idea of how much of the retail do you see. So it activates the street, but you still get sufficient amount of the material that feels like brick coming down.
The jail?
That's Laura Starr.
Presenting the jail.
Sorry,
Yep.
Laura, you're on mute. I gotcha.
She's having dinner.
Yeah, never mind, I muted her. Sorry about that.
Next.
My goodness.
So
Speaking
here's
for
a
you.
view from what the design on the left-hand side that we had in the RFP and the proposed design. Again, the massing is very different because we pulled it back from the street, particularly over White Street, that you'll see is quite, opens the street up to the sky quite significantly. The materiality is significantly different here. Next. So just a closer look at that, and then the notion that the street is activated with community and retail spaces, so it ties the street experience into the neighborhood. Next. A view through White Street Arcade, what was presented in our proposal on the left-hand side was significantly, had quite a lot of glass with the idea of making that retail. We heard from the community that they wanted a lot less glass and incorporation of the warm material, so we've moved in a very different direction in the design that you see on the right-hand side. Next. That also starts to include the sense of portals for and entrances to the retail and the community space, so there's clear wayfinding and signage associated. Next. And then a view of White Street Passage from Baxter Street, and we're looking towards Center Street here, starting to pull together all of the elements of the architecture and the public realm and landscape that we've seen previously. Right, next. And so we've taken that one view and looked at different conditions, different seasons, and different times of the day. So we've sort of picked a morning. The row at the top is the morning and the row at the bottom is the afternoon. So you'll see in spring, sunlight is actually, because it's lower, it's reaching in from the east side. So it's actually hitting the center of White Street Arcade. So I'm referencing the top left image. By the afternoon, that sunlight has flipped from the west side and it's coming in from the other side. The two central images, which is summer, the sun is much higher in the morning, so the sun is much closer to the to Baxter Street, so the end of White Street Arcade. By the evening, we're getting fairly low sun. It's come across and it's actually coming through the entire arcade itself. In the winter, in 10 a.m. In the morning, the sun again very low, quite low, so it is coming into in the morning. Into White Street Passage, you're seeing it light up the facade on the right-hand side, light up the building on the right-hand side. Obviously, by 4 p.m., it's getting quite dark. So what is being illustrated is artificial lighting in there. We're going to go to Jeff to talk about the interior of the
Very good. All right. So yes, we've talked a lot about the exterior and people in the community will obviously experience this building from near and far. But what does happen inside the building, how it's expressed is also very important as a community member building and also in a neighbor. So, some of the comments that we heard frequently: create a space that feels less like a detention center, allow for visitors to feel welcome and familiar, comfortable environment. Then questions about, the amenities and resources for people that are coming to visit. Next, please. So in response to these, we are endeavoring to create an inviting, warm space that feels natural and comfortable for people to visit, also the people in custody that will be here, and staff as well. And then the second point, providing that easily accessible locker and restroom and space, and so people can feel welcome and also feel secure, and that their, the belongings are in a secure place, and all the other things that help reduce stress when you're coming to visit a facility. Next. Then, again, peer review comments, use natural color palette extended with the greens and blues. You've seen some of that from the outside. That'll continue on the inside. Variety of seating within the facility to support different activities, and different groups of people, from children through elderly and in between as well. The facility can accommodate up to 120 visitors at one time, and then a variety of ways that people do get visits, and then accessible lockers and public restrooms provided in the lobby, again, easily accessible. Next one, please. So this is a view of the lobby as you come into it, and the idea is to really, again, create, what we've designed on the outside, bring that to the inside, bringing in daylight, bringing in those same kind of types of natural warm materials, making it very easy, making wayfinding easy as you come, find the information desk, and see the seating and the different groups of seating as you come in. It becomes immediately apparent where you need to be going, again, to create a better sense of community as you come in. Next one, please. So this view then looks back towards that outside. You can see the children's play area under supervision from adults, other groups of seating. And it's not just the ability to sit and talk, but also sometimes be able to carry out work. So we have chargers for laptops, that type of thing as well, chargers for phones. But again, full view to the neighborhood on the outside, breaking away from older norms, where perhaps a facility like this might be a little bit more enclosed than today's modern facility. Next. This is the visiting space, and this is contact visiting. So people in custody that are here will see family members, other people that they have relationships with. The idea, again, to bring in daylight, to have warm natural materials, and to make it a non-intimidating type of environment that people will want to come to, and when they're here, will be able to carry out their visit in comfort and confidence and safety. Next one, please. As I mentioned before, there's other types of visiting. So there's also a non-contact visitation where there's security glass between the people in custody and others that are coming to visit them, but it doesn't stop the idea of bringing in the daylight, the warm materials, and having those same types of themes throughout this area, to, again, enhance the internal part and bring the daylight in, and really have daylight in every element of the facility that we can. Next.
This one doesn't have any daylight though.
Well, there's windows on the right that are actually bringing in daylight.
Rooms though, right?
What's that? I'm sorry.
When you're in the rooms and you close the door, there's.
We have borrowed light. We're bringing in as much as we can, and also that corridor width that you see is a minimum one where people in custody need to be because of staffing requirements. So again, we are populating that. Perhaps we're not showing as much light as would come in from the right. When the door is shut, it does have it has, I shouldn't say full, but quite a bit of glazing in the door and the side light, and also daylight coming from the other side as well. So given security concerns, we're bringing as much daylight as we can. Then the other interior space we're going to talk about is where people in custody and staff are. And how are we providing to prevent escape, provide safety for people in custody and staff? How do you design the interior secure space to prevent cross views between Chinatown residents? And can you describe the space in education and training? So we'll talk about that a little bit. Next one, please. In response, using best practice approaches to secure environments, while also though maximizing the size of windows and so forth. Designing cell windows to optimize security, we'll have an example of that as we go and we look at the interior. Provide access to program space and mental health care. one of the things that Alan talked about is we have 1,040 people that are people in custody here. They live in 42 different living units within the facility, and each of those living units has access to care, access to medical staff, access to counselors. And so in fact, each of those footprints are rather large in the sense that that they need to be able to provide that kind of service, which in the past, in facilities across the country, have not been as readily available. So that's really something that's being brought in. And then design the outdoor recreation spaces for that connection to the outside, really make them full outdoor spaces, and then connect them back to the inside as well. Next. It's coming. Okay. And again, some of those very same points that I just went over are brought in, but I think the fourth point being especially true that it is a therapeutic environment and it will meet standards of what you would see in many healthcare facilities for mental health support and treatment, and that kind of treatment that happens right where people are located within the facility. Next one, please. So this is a typical general population type of living unit. It's 2-tier, up to 40 people live in this unit. You can see on the left part is where the outdoor recreation is attached, and there's outdoor recreation attached to every unit within the facility. That brings in additional daylight. Each of those cells that you see along the perimeter also have windows to the outside. And then the group settings on the inside include areas to eat, areas to socialize, education. Other areas, there's multi-purpose within there. So again, we've provided not only therapeutic environment, as I mentioned, but also educational, vocational within the unit. I'll just touch on the fact that there's robust vocational educational facilities in there that people will come to more centralized. So a library, gymnasium, chapels for spirituality, culinary arts kitchen, other, again, areas throughout the facility that because of the vertical nature of the facility, they'll be able to bring people to frequently and will increase their ability to participate in those programs within. Next one illustrates a more acute therapeutic environment where people are not really as much on the tiers. Now, this is all on single level. This also includes a full nurses station within the facility, staffed up to 5 people that will be there 24/7. At the end of this hall, you can see the outdoor recreation. They're bringing in daylight. But again, some of the things we talked about with color, blues, greens, and from feedback we've had from formerly incarcerated people was to have a little bit more intensity to the color. Some early presentations we did were a little bit more toned down, more that you might think is a typical type of hospital environment. Feedback we had is we like it more lively. We like colors that are related to sports, especially here in New York. So we've endeavored to, include more of that to enliven the environment. That came from direct input. Next one, please. And this is an outdoor recreation. So as I mentioned, every unit actually has this access. And what this will do is give people the opportunity to be outside much more frequently. So the design of this screening is really 2 screens that come together. From far back, you see out, you can see the sky. As you actually walk up to these 2 screens, they start to actually merge together, and the ability to see down on the sidewalk and be able to recognize people is really not there. And this is something we continue to work on and continue to develop, but it also addresses not only being able to see, get daylight, get air in, but also protect privacy for the people that are in the facility and the people that live in the surrounding area. Next one. And the last one I'll illustrate is each person's cell. We have 1,040 of these. Everybody has their own space. Everybody has their own private space with utilities that work within it. And then you can see the window that is in here. It is 12 square feet. It has required security measures to make it a maximum security envelope. But also, it does have views outside up to 6 feet. That is a frosted inner layer within the window. So you have a security window on the inside. You have an outside window that is actually a curtain wall window. But again, we do studies in the neighborhood looking at views in and out of the facility constantly. We'll continue to work on that to protect privacy for people inside and out. But that is the current concept that we're using for the window that everybody has in their room. Next one. So the last thing I'll just leave you with is that there are many elements that the city, the mayor's office, Department of Correction that conveyed to us that they wanted to include in this design. We use this check all the time as we're developing the design to make sure we're continuing to meet these values, to continue to make sure that we're hitting these marks as we progress the design further. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
So I'm gonna stop sharing. Unless somebody, asks to go to a slide. Right.
Go ahead, Jason.
What are we here to weigh in on? Like, really?
Just general design.
Okay. Not to get too into the design, because I really don't want to, but, do you notice how, your street level has a more horizontal rhythm somehow, and the above street level has really a very vertical rhythm to it that kind of like makes Tammy's feeling that the building is much taller than the buildings around it. You know, it's missing a band or something, or some way to like not make it going up to the sky. That's my, because the rhythm in the neighborhood, there's always horizontal. If it's a postmodern building, you see the slab of sticking out, and then the brick. If it's a tenement building, there is a real rhythm to the windows that makes a more horizontal thing because it's punched opening. So, yeah, and I will also agree though that, the building to the left does emphasize a certain horizontality because of it being a skyscraper type building and a deco building. But even that building does have in between its horizontals a more pronounced, deeper horizontal band under each window. Each window is broken up into double hung windows. So for me, your measure of that is two stacked up vertically. Okay.
Can I ask a question? This peer review, who do you mean? It's part of your public comment areas?
You want to
So
expand that
that
more?
was conducted during the proposal phase. It was a closed door session, so peer reviewers had to sign an NDA. They were given access to some of the confidential materials and floor plans and such that we don't make public, but they also reviewed a lot of this content that you do see public.
For the other architects and
Yes,
engineers?
so it's a selection of other experts. We had architects and landscape architects from around the country who were able to share their expertise. We also, for the Manhattan facility, invited two architects who are representatives from the community. So Alice Blank was on the peer review, and Henry Ng, an architect local to Chinatown, both joined to share their comments.
I assume that you're only doing the Manhattan facility, you're not doing the other boroughs?
Well, we're part of the Tudor Perini HOK team. We are doing the Brooklyn facility as well, but not.
The point I'm trying to make is maybe we could learn something from the other boroughs that might be relevant to Manhattan.
They're worse.
That's also to be learned from.
So that was one question, and then the other one was the question about retail. I don't think it's a happy space. And I'm trying to think of what kind of retailing would go there, and what type of retail would not interfere with the neighborhood.
I agree. It should be fully curated.
So I think you need to put a lot of thought into the retail. The only suggestions I have is that, big box is not gonna work there. So it's gotta be smaller facilities, subsidized, I think, because you can't have high rents there. And you wanna maybe incubate spaces and things like that. So I think a lot of thought should be put into that, and then you don't want it to compete with existing businesses.
So if I could just share a little bit of insight. So in this facility, there's a total of 20,000 square feet of community and or retail space. The community space will be programmed at a future time by City Hall and some other city agencies. This team here today is responsible for essentially building the white box, like fitting in that amount of floor space, but not actually programming or doing the fit out. The retail space in particular, there's an agreement with Chung Pak. So the Chung Pak building in the previous detention facility that we had to demolish as part of, to build this one, there was 5,960 square feet of retail space that was displaced or relocated. So we are putting that back in agreement with them. So total of 20,000 square feet, 5,960 of those square feet will be given essentially to Chung Pack to program. So that's a community organization that will be programming that retail space in particular. But we are always happy to hear comments and feedback on the retail and community space. And we
But that's
share that
one
with their
portion
city
of it.
partners. Yeah.
You have the whole arcade that's in the center, that needs to be programmed.
That is the
That
retail
is-
space that Lauren's talking about.
That's the community center that goes to.
So there are retail spaces, total of 5 retail spaces that are going.
If you go to the ground floor.
Yeah,
Yeah, and they're small. It's
trying to figure out which ones show.
right at the beginning, I think.
Entrance areas.
Art design, which reads.
I think there was a floor plan.
Yeah.
Maybe retail space, but it doesn't show it broken up.
Yeah, the final exact layout and footprint of what's retail, what's community space is still in progress. We will come back, I think at our next presentation to this board, we'll be able to show that in more detail. This is also something that will be worked with Chung Pack.
So essentially along White Street, Arcade is gonna be broken up into smaller retail spaces and then the larger community retail spaces, Baxter, and that the city is going to work with the community to program that.
So when I'm looking at something like this imagery that you had up, right? The original one are those like entrances that you showed on the original drawing on the left.
Right.
You know, where you had those, it looks like, 5 doorways into the arcade. Are those all retail entrances? Is that what that is?
It's still in progress to be determined.
Yeah.
Most likely because we want to activate the arcade, but it's not set yet. It's still in
But
progress.
that's what we were depicting, that essentially that is where it would be, without being very specific about exactly each one, but you picked up on that correctly.
And are you going to have a large sign outside that says Manhattan Detention Facility? Like you have shown in your drawing?
There is going to be potentially some signage. Now, what that signage is, we're many years
That's
away from
Very
determining
much,
that.
that's, very early.
Yeah, and that signage goes through the Public Design Commission process as well.
So this is probably a generic sign.
This
that
is
you
just
see.
sort of,
Just a generic representation of something to indicate the primary entrance to the facility, but exactly what that sign is, what that looks like, et cetera. Yes, we'll have to go through a separate PDC process in the future.
Just getting back to the retail, I mean, my guess is that the, existing retail on Canal is going to be squeezed out over the next few years. And we're gonna see more of Soho, Novo, whatever. And, some of the greatest things that were on Canal, the Pearl Paints and things like that, it would be great to, have a home for them and that they can afford. So I would put a lot of thought into, how to make that more of a destination, because otherwise it would be hard to convince anybody to go there.
no, I think we're taking notes today and,
We're
this
happy to
is
share
something
your
we're gonna
feedback
take.
with Chung Pack and the entities that will be responsible for programming that.
So I have a couple things. At the top of the presentation, I'm really concerned. We had a presentation by DOT for changes on Canal Street. Their changes and your presentation overlap in ways that are completely disconnected. So for example, their removal of all commercial parking along Canal Street pushed it over towards Baxter and the side streets. So I have a lot of strong concerns that the left hand is not talking to the right hand, and the diagrams that you showed with public parking don't reflect either the revocable consent for the restaurants that are there, are completely disconnected from the realities on the ground, because there is outdoor dining, and was or will be, and the fact that they're looking to potentially remove all commercial parking from Canal, as well as closing part of Walker, which is not at all in anything that you've shown us. So it's very disconcerting to not have two presentations in the same month have any overlap. Have you been working at all with DOT?
Yep, we have been, we
Okay.
presented to them and we're submitting for revocable consent, next month.
For what?
For the curb bump outs and the bollards.
And the parking layout as we've sort of shown it along the street.
But this has been reviewed by them.
That makes it even more disconcerting for me, though, that your presentation showed Walker Street open, Baxter Street fully open, and that's not the conversations that they are having. They, in their presentation, Walker Street is,
You're talking maybe about some of the early diagram.
It might be a diagram.
it's in your presentation here, about this, here, I will share. Okay, in this particular one, you show public parking all along Baxter Street. And I don't see the curb bump out that you have there, you just have public parking.
Right, so this is the existing condition is what we're, showing in here with what's permitted for the building. This is not the proposed design.
Okay, do you have a diagram that looks exactly like this with the proposed design that I missed on the slides?
We can prepare a diagram that looks exactly like this, but what the site conditions are, if you go to the ground floor plan that we've shown a little bit later, I think in the public realm.
I'll get there in 1 second, but understand what DOT is proposing to us, right? And conversations have been had about adding a bike lane on Walker, closing from Baxter to Canal Walker completely, and then pushing any of the commercial parking needs onto the side streets. That poses a significant concern that you're telling them what you're doing, they're coming to us with a different plan, and there does not seem to be, for the community's perspective, overlap for understanding, because now this is the next slide that you showed us, which was public space connections. And again, that would have to be different, right? And then you said it's the, I'll find the other one that you, this one? Does not,
Keep going, sorry.
that does not have a curb bump out or any accurate representation. This one shows the top of Baxter, but it doesn't have relevance to understand how tight that street is and what that would happen to the public parking on the other side or this side of the street. So I don't see anything on here where you have.
So here, that's probably getting the more.
But what is
zoomed out view?
What is load-in? If DOT is proposing to remove all of the commercial parking on Canal Street and push it all into the side streets, there are several restaurants at Baxter is a very restaurant-heavy street that has had roadway dining. How does?
Point's very well taken. As Autumn said, the team has started the conversation with DOT. DOT is reviewing these plans as they progress, and we will absolutely continue the conversation. We'll follow up with them about some of these specific items, Tammy.
Yeah, I'm considerably frustrated because they came to us presenting plans, said they were talking to you. None of this was mentioned in their plans, and they were here a week ago.
Okay, we'll follow up with them.
Okay. I'd also like to understand how when we're talking, I'm gonna stop and share so I just wanted to clarify. When you mentioned about the symmetry with matching into Chinatown, I wanted just to note that in the profile where you're doing that on the bottom part of the building that goes, does that extend all the way back on Baxter to the bottom Baxter from every part of the building on Baxter?
I'm sorry, I don't follow your question.
Lower part of. The lower part of Baxter, you said you were making contextual to Chinatown.
Yes.
The original drawings did not have that contextuality through the entire length of Baxter. As it came closer to the courthouse, the materiality on the lower levels changed.
So that is not the case anymore. The materiality that matches Chinatown is the entire length of Baxter. From the edge of the courthouse, including the Sally Port gates, all the way to Champac Party Wall.
Thank you. And then I love your pictures of Collect Pond. The drawings are beautiful. Is BBJ putting money into fixing Collect Pond so it actually looks like that? Because Collect Pond does not have water, has not had water for at least 5 to 10 years, 5 years that I can remember, and it's broken beyond repair. So if BBJ is talking about enhancing the beauty and the light and everything and using, is DBC planning on fixing Collect Pond?
Collect Pond Park is outside the scope of the BBJ program, but we will absolutely share these comments with our city partners.
Well, I'm looking, saying I didn't get all of the community space that was promised to me in the points of agreement. Because the city chose to come back and say, oh, Chung Pak was part of it, even though in every single part of the agreement and DCAS confirmed it. It was not included. That is a change that came since that agreement. So it would be great if while we're looking at community, then maybe you could fix Collect Pond in the area.
We'll happily share those comments.
Awesome. And then how does the cement seating that you have throughout the entire thing of White Street, how is that contextual to the more natural parts on Baxter? Because that is a treatment on both the benches and the wrappings of the bottom of the building and at the street edge on both streets, so it doesn't look contextual. How is that?
And also, I should clarify, that's not concrete, that's granite.
Great.
So it is stone, right? So, and it is a stone that you experience in most buildings in New York because it withstands New York's climate, it withstands the heavy use the New York City streets get. So it is granite and it will feel very similar to a New York experience, but maybe Autumn can talk.
But I'm asking how it relates to the neighborhood contextual, not the same stone that you're using in other jails and things like that in other buildings. How is it contextual to the neighborhood here? Because that granite is not present in either the courthouse buildings, it's not present like in the exterior, it's not present in Chinatown. It's a new materiality that does not seem like it's blending. It's unique for this location, which if that's your goal to be unique, that's one thing, but it is not contextual.
So we're using the goal of that material, because it's at the base of the building, it's the first two feet of the building, is essentially to take the hardest use. Where people will hit up against it, trolleys will hit against it, you know, all sorts of, all manner of usage. Granite is really as a material, the only thing that can withstand it. We can look at the exact color of granite that is appropriate. We've spent a lot of time looking at the predominant building materials. We can look at it a little bit more. I do want to add granite is limestone and granite are the two major materials in the civic district, albeit a lighter gray color. So we can certainly study that, but we did look at materiality in the parks.
Yeah, we're using the same kind of furnishing style. And again, it's a matter of syncing up some of the materiality as it relates to the building and in the public realm. So we're using granite, natural stone as much as possible. Other typical furnishing hardware that you would see in the park like setting. So we're trying to mimic that as much as possible.
One of the questions that we asked the architects during 2 meetings is that the other thing in the points of agreement is there's supposed to be adaptive reuse plan for this building in the God's greatest hope that our jail population reduces. There is no adaptive reuse in the entirety of the building other than the jail pods could come out, but there wasn't any confirmation that the jail pods would actually be able to come back out, get onto a loading dock and get out. And then how would the lobby change? Like, how would you differentiate if you're only building a lobby space to be a jail and an entire arrival and departure for a jail? There's no adaptive reuse actually for decommissioning floors for a different use. There wasn't separate elevator conversations. There was no conversation that turned. And when we asked the architect at the meeting 2 meetings ago, they had not been given the directive for adaptive reuse. The follow-up meeting in answer to my adaptive reuse was that the jail pods could be removed. But
So, Danielle, I'm not sure who you had a conversation with at the first meeting. We did go back and rewatch the entire video of the meeting. That question was not asked during the
it was
public
afterwards
Q&A.
when we came up.
Okay, So I wasn't there and we don't have a record of that question or exactly what the context was. So I can't speak to that architect's response. However, the entirety of the points of agreement was attached to the contract and to the RFP, which the architects reviewed. As we said, the summary of the requirement to consider possible measures that would potentially allow for adaptive reuse, that's the actual language in the points of agreement, is covered in the design guidelines and in other areas of the contract. I think we've already responded to this question in writing. So some of the measures that would potentially allow for an adaptive reuse, which has not been defined and would be defined by a future administration, is this construction method, which is unique to this jail of having these pre-modular units that could be inserted so that you could also remove them in the future and have an open floor slab. Again, some of the questions that you're asking, they're great questions, but exactly how the building would be retrofitted, would be adaptively reused, would depend on what that future use would be, which it's too much to ask these architects. That would have to be defined at a future time. This has not been defined. It would be defined by a future administration. It would depend on when in the future we're doing that, what the different needs and conditions of the city are, what that use would be. So there's a lot of unanswered questions. What the architects are doing is designing the building and constructing the building in a way that would allow for that possibility. We can't get into the specifics. There's too many unanswered questions.
So that's a conversation for the new administration. Is what you're saying.
I have a question about the materiality of, so the interior images, they had punched windows that you could see that they're punched windows. Your expression on the exterior is a glass box with some materiality on it. Is there a plan to register, the punched windows? How are they being treated on the exterior? To me, the building, the exterior images could be anywhere. You could pick them up and you could put them in
Should be.
suburban DC and they could create a space that works. And I quite like the little arcade that you guys have proposed, and I hope it's gonna become successful. I think it needs to be curated super well for it to survive. But the expressions of the buildings, to me, it's kind of like, why? Is it registering the program that's inside of it? Do they need to have floor to ceiling glass when they're actually punched windows?
So they're actually, the scale that we're registering on the exterior of the building, the width of every module that we register is 7.5 feet. That is the scale of individual cells. So that scale, that human scale, is registered on the facade itself. So in any of the undulation, you see the undulation of the solid element and the glazed element in itself represents that human scale. Vertically, we're registering 2 floors, which is what creates that very vertical expression, similar to what the courthouse does. And if we were to zoom in to the renderings, which might be losing a little bit of resolution here, you'll see a fair bit of horizontal detailing within that band that show you where the vision portion of the glazing is. So horizontally, there is an opaque part that is registered externally. And then there's a glazed part. Now that glazed part is designed, that whole unit is designed very carefully to be performative for the interior space. It is, there's a couple of different modules to it. So the facade either rotates significantly when there's a lot of radiation, which is at the top of the building, where you start to see that it is looking much more solid up there. So it reduces the radiation, but brings in daylight to the lower part of the building that pulls in, and the glazing. So while the interior window always stays the same for equity for everybody, the exterior will increase the aperture. So it actually increases the amount of daylight. So as you go lower on the floors, and you would have experienced that, you get less daylight because of the context. So the building is adapting itself to the different orientations, east, west, north.
Which I'm sure it's a very sophisticated system, but the program that goes inside, whatever that was shown, doesn't have any access to direct light, right?
It does. Each cell, most of the program that you're seeing in here is cells behind every window. So there's a very careful calibration of how much daylight, how much solar comfort, how much glare comfort is in each of the cells. With the glazing that
So
is designed
those
externally.
windows, they're not registering on the exterior of the building, right?
No, that's exactly it. So what you see as the solid between the glazing is the solid part that you're seeing externally. Just vertically, where you've got the window, you've got vision glaze, and then below that, you've got spandrel glazing, which is basically opaque glass, which is what is making you think that this looks so punched, and it doesn't look punched on the exterior.
But I like this one, to me, this one,
So this one, you're not looking at the windows here, the windows are behind the doors, behind the cells, and the.
got it, okay. And there are no issues with the outdoor spaces being on the perimeter of the building, exposed to streets and public.
So as Jeff said, there's 2 layers of screening. Very good. You, on the inside, and you're seeing on the left-hand side, you're seeing the 2 layers, right? On the inside is the secure perimeter, the detention mesh. On the exterior is the visual screening. Combined, these 2 perform a whole host of functions. Anti-ligature, anti-climb, privacy screening. The exterior mesh actually is, it's a little bit 3-dimensional, so it's.
And they throw their rings out?
There is a 1.5 foot of space between the 2 meshes. That space is accessible. There is accessible panels that can be cleaned. So there is a fair bit of deterrent there.
Got it.
And most of these outdoor spaces start higher up in the building. It's not close to the street level.
There was a jail when I was living in LA that you couldn't walk on the sidewalk because they would maybe throw their drinks on.
Familiar with it, yeah, I know which one you mean.
I have a question. The jail is directly facing 90 Lafayette Street, which is a single-man homeless shelter. And that houses over 150 beds every night. And it is a traditional homeless shelter where people usually get pushed out during the day. And you mentioned that the design is trying to stop loitering in the area. However, in your new updated screens, the slides, I don't see the benches much difference from your previous design because it's still a long benches. I see people still can sleep on it. We don't want the neighborhood to become Sarah D. Roosevelt Park because that is surrounded by certain homeless shelters, and the crime problem is already out of control. That's the first concern I have. And the second concern I have is that during the second design workshop, we mentioned that we requested DDC try to gate the arcade because we also see the arcade will become potential attractions for this loitering during the evening and night. And another things we brought up during the workshop was that who is going to manage those planters? These are beautiful trees, like your drawings, they're all beautiful. Who's going to manage that? I used to manage Chongpak. I used to be the director of that organization, so I'm very familiar with how Department of Correction do their work. Their planters has been dead for decades. They never really managed that. The surrounding, the existing, the previous jail, the sidewalk was paved. It was not concrete. Those pavers were always broken. We request them to replace them. Nobody deal with it. So how do we trust in the future? I mean, number one, who's gonna manage these beautification elements? And how do we trust they actually can do it? So these are my questions.
Thank you. What was your name?
Jackie. My name is Jackie Wong. I'm the district leader for 65B.
Thank you, Jeff.
We could pull up one of the renders. I think that helps to talk about the planter walls and the benches. If you're able to, but I can verbally speak to it too. So we are continuing to refine. We have reduced the amount of seating significantly in our update. So we eliminated a lot of the seat walls. So we have
kind of pointed seating in key locations with armrests, to kind of help deter prolonged loitering. I don't wanna say homelessness, right? So you have prolonged loitering, right? That's the best we can do in terms of the seating aspect, and on top of other potential deterrents that can allow for that kind of prolonged loitering. I can't speak to the gate aspect, but for the maintenance aspect, we are still working on our palette. We're gonna have irrigation within our beds. It's gonna be as robust as we can, but as hardy as we will select a species to thrive in an area that doesn't require a lot of maintenance. So that's on the planting front. In terms of materiality, within the right of way, we're using the DOT standards, so that'll be DOT's purview for sidewalks, and then we're gonna use granite pavers, which is much more robust than your typical asphalt hex pavers that fall apart. I know those pavers, they do fall apart quite easily. So that's the longevity of those materials that we are trying to propose on top of the type of streetscape furnishing.
DOT doesn't maintain any of this.
No, they don't.
So the point is well taken. Who is maintaining?
It would be
Yeah,
DOT.
DOC will be ultimately responsible for maintaining this. They may choose to partner, with a local entity to assist with that, but that is a future decision that will be made at a future time. But ultimately, it is a part of DOT.
They don't.
I'm sorry, DOC.
And what about the
In the gate, yeah.
And the gates, so there are not plans to gate this off. The intent is that this is an open public passageway that will allow pedestrian access 24/7 and people can move through this space. But again, there's a lot of security measures that are being, considered, and the design team is looking at this very, very thoroughly to do what they can from a design standpoint to kind of discourage some of the uses that you're concerned about.
Great. I have one last comment about the solar studies that you have done, which I'm sorry, sure. I do understand the massing it is and it was given to you guys, but did you guys look at the shading on the lower scale housing or fabric of the city that is towards Chinatown? And does it get impacted? I know you looked at the parks, but how about the smaller buildings that are?
So the building will cast shadows onto the buildings across the street on Baxter there in the morning hours, but obviously as the sun moves around in the afternoon, Baxter Street has sunlight in there.
Is that one block or two blocks that it impacts?
And
one block.
So the bottom line is the current.
Sorry, after the other.
The bottom line shows what you are currently proposing. The top line is immaterial anymore, correct?
Correct.
I mean, they are similar, it's a little bit better, but still we have one block.
Yeah. So the afternoon it gets the shadow, but then it moves very quickly.
And is the bottom of, I'm confused on the shadow study. So the bottom is Baxter Street, the top is Center.
No, sorry, the other way around. Baxter is the top.
That green
Towards
outline, the
Baxter
green
is
dashed
the top.
outline is
Yeah.
Columbus.
Thank you. So the neighborhood would be in shadow mostly in the afternoons. And the senior center, which is next door, has brand new shadow at noon. Consistently, no matter, in the winter, right? The new shadows over
Yes.
Chung Pak. So Chung Pak loses, in the winter, Chung Pak has no sunlight. Other than a tiny little corner at 9 AM. Otherwise, there is no sunlight on that building.
So you're seeing the shadows, obviously from the facility. Their windows, however, face the other side, right? Their windows are facing Walker Street and Baxter. So the facility is not going to cast the shadow that way over them.
Could I That's one. Can you talk a little bit more about the privacy aspects in terms of visibility from and to the detainees in particular, and any other areas where they would be?
Absolutely. So I think it's also important to understand just the structure of the project itself. The ground floor, as you saw on the plan, is fairly public use. Levels 2 to 5 are building support. So that's sort of staff administration. There's some programming spaces, there's transportation spaces, so building support. Level 5 is health services. Level 6 onwards is where the typical housing units start. Now that is where the building sets back. Right, so in terms of the residents, which are mostly on the east side and the north side, that the housing units start well above the existing buildings. So there are no direct connections in the first instance. Now, if you look at any of the typical cells, which are along the entire perimeter, the cells themselves, as Jeff was discussing, it's a 12 square foot window, which is a residential scaled window. The first 6 feet from the floor, up till the first 6 feet, the window is frosted. So while daylight comes in and you get a sense of what's kind of going out, you don't have direct view. So for people in custody inside, looking down is what is being prevented. And then above 6 feet is clear, so their views are to the sky.
Well, and looking back up at them is also prevented.
Yes, and looking back up at them
So-
from the lower
right.
residential buildings.
So you
also.
really can't see what people in custody are doing in their cell.
And what if a building across the street is demolished and a taller building built? I don't know if that's permitted in this current zoning or.
It isn't, but even if you're looking down, that cell window is actually still back off the facade by a good amount. So that, as we've looked at studies, that 6 feet of the frost, it actually impedes the view in, because if you're looking from above, you can't really see into that slot. That's the clear sky. So you can't, if you were looking straight in, you could see the top part. From above, you really don't get a view.
I mean, it's like two apartments facing each other. You never know what's gonna go on the other side. You might be able, or someone might be able to look if they stand at the right spot, right? So, frosted or not, someone will see.
And so
And we tried to do a design that essentially has the shades pulled all the time. Because that's essentially what the frosting is shades, except for a band up at the top. But for the 6 feet, it's essentially the same as having if you were to have shades.
And we
pulled.
need to design not just the existing condition, but to the existing zoning, right? Because that's what we can design to. So the buildings are only allowed to be X amount tall, and then the residences are above them.
Sure.
Right, so therefore designing for what in the foreseeable future is the condition, which is to prevent people in custody being able to see down into residential apartments, and to prevent that communication. That's what the design successfully addresses.
And when you say frosting, are you talking about a frosted film that you put
Yes.
on it?
Yes.
But that they can pull.
No, they don't have access to it.
It's on the other side.
You have two pieces of glass and it's in between. So you have glass, and then you have the polycarbonate, which is actually your secure layer, and then another piece of glass. In that interstitial is where the frost is, so the people there have no access to it.
Which, I mean, I'm gonna go back to what Tammy said earlier. I didn't know the brief had this conversion, adaptive reuse in the future. Then I would question, if the facade is the most expensive parts of this building that's going up, why not make it more flexible? So if the project gets converted to residential or hotel or shelter down the line, then the facade could work for another program.
So as we talked about, potentially the cells could come out, that window comes right out with it. The one that's got the.
But you still have it open.
Yeah, so the facade is a curtain wall facade, which is a unitized, also a modular facade.
The structure and the envelope of the buildings are actually very much like a lot of other commercial buildings we know. It's a frame. It has the curtain wall on the outside. So there's no dependency on the cells or any other portion of what the functions are of our facility to hold anything up. So you
the
can actually
cell-
pull it all out.
The cell comes in with, it's fully enclosed.
The cell is
It's like a
a
container.
pre-manufactured unit.
But it's still not gonna help. You can't adaptively reuse if you only check in the lobby that you have. Let's say they decided to take the shelter that the gentleman's talking about across the street and put it on 2 floors inside. You're not gonna be able to do that because there's no adaptive reuse in the lobby. Even if they fix the upstairs,
Yeah, but
That-
it's one step forward.
yeah, it's one step closer. There's no, yeah. So, yes. Kira has her hand up.
Hi,
Vera.
yeah, so, I mean, my comment is that it's still way too glassy, it's overwhelming, and it dwarfs the buildings surrounding it, especially Chung Pak and the buildings on Baxter Street. And by the way, there are windows on Chung Pak that face Center Street too, so I don't know about the shadowing impact on that and how those windows can look into this, shiny, overwhelming new structure that's there, but that's really not the focus of my question. I wanted to know, how long is this supposed to be built to last? Because as you know, we've gone through many, many, many different jails being built there and then being demolished within 30 to 40 years. So how long is this being built to last?
The facility is going to be designed for 50 years.
Only 50 years? So conceivably within 50 years, then it could be taken down again, something rebuilt in its place. It may not even be able to be adaptively reused. Is that what I'm hearing?
Those would be decisions that would get made by a future administration at a future time here. We're not able to speak to that.
As you can imagine, it's shocking to hear that, and not acceptable. The other question I have is with respect to the foundation. Are you prepared to discuss the design of the foundation? I know that you had your 75 new boring tests done, and a lot of us have reviewed that reviewed that report and have a lot of concerns about how you're going to proceed with the foundation and how it impacts the stability of the buildings around. Are you going to be discussing that anytime soon?
Here, as we said at the beginning, we have a construction meeting that's being scheduled for January. I believe the
Okay.
day is going to be January 22nd. We're confirming that with the local electeds, and that's when we'll be discussing foundation, the geotechnical borings, the dewatering process, a lot of those questions that surround construction.
All right, so that'll be for the next meeting. Have you signed an access agreement yet with Chung Pak?
That is in progress.
Okay, and I understand you need that in order to be able to proceed, right?
Yes, but that agreement is in progress with Chung Pak.
Okay. Another thing was the artists Kityan Schneider and Richard Haas, who did the public art at the last jail, which Jackie mentioned about how it was completely defaced, destroyed, and then later on taken away in order to demolish the existing structures there. There is a settlement with the city that their artwork should be incorporated into the new structure and or somewhere similar or nearby as per, a mutual agreement. What has been done with respect to that with their artwork?
We are currently looking at options to incorporate that existing artwork that will be presented to the community a little later in the process. That will also have to go through a separate PDC process. So this is all in progress. It's not part of this current submission package. It would be a separate PDC submission package, and we will absolutely bring it to the community board and present it before it goes in.
Are you talking about exterior or interior?
Well, so there's both incorporation of the former artwork that was part of the exterior of the dismantled site, so we're looking at options to incorporate that into the building. There's also a separate percent for art process where we'd be looking to commission new artworks, so both of those are part of a, separate.
When you come back, because none of it's represented on any of the slides that you've shown us, or, models, there's been nothing about art, it's all a unified design building. So
We're not at that stage yet to
it's a
present
little
the
hard to
concept
understand
video,
where you would
but-
incorporate it unless you're putting placeholders.
Yeah, I think by the time we're coming back next after this is again, we're here for our conceptual submission to PDC. This is the first preliminary step. I shouldn't have said preliminary because the next submission is the preliminary review. We'll have to check in with you. I don't know exactly when we do the presentation of the artwork, but there will be a presentation to the community board specifically about the artwork. And future submissions to PDC and future presentations about the whole design will also incorporate the artwork.
We'd like to know exactly when you're going to PDC, because.
This is December 18th is when we are submitting the conceptual package to PDC. We can get back to you with the dates for when we would submit the artwork packages to PDC.
And will PDC be taking public comment? That's a question because we need.
I think for conceptual, I will double check. I believe, and correct, if I'm speaking out of turn, I'll send you an email later. I believe for conceptual review, there's not a public comment period that takes place during PDC preliminary review. But PDC is always interested in the community's feedback. We're hoping that you all, write a letter or a resolution and share it with PDC as part of this process. They always ask us, they want to know what we're going to be submitting and sharing with them the community feedback that we learned at workshops 1 and 2. And we hope the board will also share your feedback with PDC.
Alice.
Alice, do you have anything you want to add? I did not read any of the feedback initially. Oops. She was. Can you tell us, I'll ask a couple of questions.
Sorry, Tammy, I'm sorry. I think I've come in so late and I apologize, but you have the notes and I feel a little bit remiss not to be able to chime in here, but I think you probably have covered a lot of what is in the notes, and I know that all the players are aware of these because I've offered these up earlier. So I'm not sure if you want me to read them, but I don't know that this is probably going to be that useful right now.
All right, I'll go over some of them that were not answered. Okay. Vera mentioned the 50 years. And for a useful life, what is being planned in this particular jail to make sure that there is not obsolescence in the design features to handle any increase in population? I know we talked about reduction and adaptive reuse, which is not necessarily in there, but is there anything in here that in the design features that explores the need for increased?
No, actually, it's capped at 1,040, and that meets any current and developing state requirements. So in the state, you can't put 2 people in a cell. They're not sized for putting 2 in. So this design doesn't contemplate going over that cap at 1,040.
And so
larger.
There's nothing that would potentially go for potential further increases or overcrowding issues.
Not with the current design, and not even contemplated as modifications to a future design.
How does the project incorporate, and are there pilot programs, and maybe a DOC answer, established at the existing Rikers facility that has affected the design?
Well, I think a lot of programs, actually. I mean, there's a lot of programs that exist at Rikers, but the facilities themselves are actually sort of a limitation on how many people get access. So one of the lessons learned here is to create a design that actually allows more people to have more frequent access. That means the number of classrooms, as we talked about, this outdoor recreation space is available to every living unit. So that nobody has to be, say, transported to an outdoor space. That's right there where they live. And so those are, those are areas of lessons to improve outcomes for people that are people in custody at the facility.
What I did notice, there was one main entrance to a community space that's in your sketches and drawings. It obviously, multiple entries from Baxter to a community space should be consideration for integration and accessibility needs. We will need to see more transportation information, much like I pointed out the problems that we're having with DOT. But there's an extraordinary increase in the amount of people who are going to be working here and incarcerated here, and everything is very different. So we'd like to see the transportation studies for the staff visitor service vehicles, especially with the changes for where the Sallyport is. And so how that actually would be real world effect on Baxter Street, because the Sallyport and the security and everything else, we know what it looked like afterwards. We know what the designs look like initially for that building. And what I don't see with a curb bump out and bollards and everything else is the realities of how things work. So we'd like to see some more transportation studies about access and egress with capacity and numbers to really understand that, and access to the parking garage, how many cars are gonna be allowed down there, what's the turnover, how that's gonna work for the building. Perhaps Department of Corrections can tell us what they're doing for all the people in terms of if there's no spaces down below, where are people going? What plans have they made and worked on for that? For the construction timeline and mitigation plans, obviously we'll wanna see that. But the independent monitor needs to be an independent monitor on this project, not just in demolition, but for everything that happens going forward. We've learned from the last presenter how difficult it is being in a historic neighborhood and the problems for the neighbors. There is no difference between that one hotel on Warren and this project. It is the same, and quite frankly, even more frightening and scary for the community. So I'd like to get a confirmation from the city, and Lauren, I'm looking directly back at you as the representative for the independent monitor.
Well, we've addressed this question many times as we are nearing dismantle. That is not in the current plan or budget. We have said many times that this is something the community could bring up and potentially work with elected officials. We do have a third-party engineer that will be doing full environmental monitoring on the site, including noise, dust, and vibration during the construction of this project. That is absolutely part of the plans. All of that will be conducted. I understand your position that you want an independent monitor, but again,
You represent the city, and you represent the city in your role here. And I'm telling you that every point that you come, that is part of it.
Okay, I hear you.
You're
Well,
not,
the
you're
city
not
hears you,
just
and-
telling me that it pushes off to the next when you are the lead on this project. And for the billions and billions and decades that we will be here, I think it is incumbent on you to actually be the one who answers the question.
That's what I was just doing.
Yeah. And advocate. In the points of agreement, the city talked about a promise of improvement of Chungback's outdoor terrace. It's agreement 15. Consisting of the terrace's enclosure. Can you tell me where that is in the design and construction part of that, and how the light studies have been looked at for that?
Sorry, can you repeat?
Points of agreement, right? Number 15, improvements to Chungpack's outdoor terrace, consisting of the terrace's enclosure, part of the MDC contracted work.
I will double check with City Hall for the exact status. I believe that at this point, the funding has been worked out with Chungpack. They needed to execute this, but I will double check. That's a City Hall question that's being handled separately from the scope of the BBJ project, but that is definitely something that is in the works.
Right, because we'd certainly like to know who's responsible for the design and the construction of the terrace, and how that works with the overlook and shade studies that you're doing, whether changes will be done to their enclosure to account for the additional shade that building will be in.
those might end up being questions you need to speak with Chung Pack for. Again, this team here is not directly handling or responsible for that, but we'll bring that to City Hall.
Can you tell me what the current cost of the project is?
$3.76 billion.
Could you just repeat that?
$3.764 billion.
Yeah. And when you come back, will you talk about, stormwater drainage and how and what the capacities are around some extraordinary building? A lot more people, a lot more stuff. And what kind of connection with the sewers, the overflow systems and storms and things like that have been looked at in terms of how to handle sustainability, energy performance metrics, carbon footprint, things like that.
The architect's not in, so yes, we can address that.
Yes, we
That
can
kind of
address
stuff.
that, but the building is looking to achieve LEED Gold. So there's a fair bit of sustainability practices being integrated into the design, but we'll get you the details.
LEED Gold, not LEED Platinum?
LEED Gold.
Particularly why?
Well, I mean, this is a challenging building typology. It's a 24/7 building, much like a hospital. The mechanical systems, therefore, associated with it are quite extensive. So LEED Gold is a high achievement.
Is that the standard of the city buildings that are being constructed? I mean, I assume that our city has some standards for the buildings that they deliver.
That was a good question. I'll have to check in and get back to you.
Well, I hope they do.
Can you note, what we haven't seen, 40% of the beds, so 400 beds are supposed to be mental health capacity beds. Are there any different treatments between the floors that you've shown us for the mental health beds versus, the therapeutic floors versus the floors you've shown us?
So the more acute, therapeutic are the single level. And then when we get, beyond that level of acuteness, it can go to the double tier. Actually, and then some of the acute treatment ones are on the double tier, so there's actually sort of a step down process. People that are higher acuity, then they can graduate through the program to get back to general population perhaps. So it kind of goes throughout that entire population. The biggest difference is that while there is access to care in all of the units, we have a very robust nurses station within the therapeutic unit that, in fact, we are staffing with mental health and medical professionals 24/7 in the unit. And on each floor has 4 units living on it or arranged on it. There's a cluster at each one that it has additional medical facility as well. So in fact, if there were to be a situation in one unit where, say, a lot of people got sick at once, they'd be able to triage them at the unit, but also then they can do it at that cluster in the middle of the floor. And then there's, as Amin mentioned, on the 5th floor, that's a full medical floor. So the ratio of medical and mental health staff to people in custody is a very high number, especially compared to industry standards. I don't exactly have that ratio, but it's quite a bit higher than other industry standards. We can come back with more detail on that.
We were told that 40% of the overall beds would be for that. So that's one of the things we're looking to understand. Along with an evacuation plan. So in case of emergency, where are people going? And how will that be handled? Especially in a residential neighborhood, that's an important question. Do you have any contingency plans for any significant archaeological findings?
I'll have to check. Sorry, I forget what exactly is covered in the contract, but an archaeological program is part of obviously the construction package. So I think that's a good question we can do at the January meeting, construction team.
Right. I think it's late. We'd like to get more comments to you and information that's come by questions. I think we managed to ask most, if not all. but I'd like to reserve an opportunity to be able to send more back. And when do you anticipate coming back with questions that were raised?
So I think our current goal is to come back to the community in March and then come back to the community board in April, I believe. It's what we're aiming for.
And again, we have a number of the questions that you raised tonight are really more suited for a construction kickoff meeting, which will take place in January.
The problem is that construction kickoff is not a public.
No, it will be a public meeting.
Okay.
Yes, so it's going to be a working group meeting first, and then the week following, we'll have an open public meeting that will provide full services in both English and Chinese for everyone.
Thank you. You're welcome. I'm done with all my questions. I have like another 30, but it's 9 o'clock and we're now for dinner.
Thank you.
Great. Anyone else?
You ask them after hours, we'll answer them after hours.
Alice has her hand up.
Alice.
Thanks, Tammy, for getting to some of my questions. These are not probably unfamiliar, certainly to Lauren and team. One that is just something to keep in mind, and that's always very much in top of mind for me, is, you know, the South Tower of the Manhattan Detention Center was constructed in 1938 as a, quote, state-of-the-art complex, you know, to alleviate poor quality of life in earlier city prison facilities. And by the 1970s, the prison was overcrowded and plagued by riots and prisoner suicides, and leading to construction of another prison that opened in 1990, also noted as state-of-the-art. So I think a real question is, you know, how will this design avoid similar obsolescence? And I think that was, you know, reviewed a little bit earlier. I'm sorry again to come late, but I've always often wondered as to why will this be different? And, you know, I know that's a future meeting and a big question, but just wanted to add to the list. And again, many thanks for all the work here.
You want me to
To answer that now?
I can start answering it now, if you like.
Go right ahead. If
So-
everyone's still.
Okay. So, the methodology of housing and managing people in custody at this facility is been utilizing a lot of research, not just here in the United States, but worldwide. And the main methodology we're using is something called direct supervision, which is different than it's been in the past, where in fact, there would be a correctional officer behind, say, in an enclosure, a piece of glass, where they're removed from the people that are there. And in fact, a lot of the housing units in those cases were more linear. And so the sight lines and the ability to actually know what's going on within the housing unit, but also in the cell, was limited. Let's just say that limitation then contributed here is, you know, issues of privacy that can be then, you know, abuse, that type of thing. So today's model that we're using, and again, the best data that we've had over the last 50 years of this approach, is that this is a sustainable approach, and it has resulted in fewer assaults, fewer other issues. And right now it's currently the best one we know of. Adding this element of the therapeutic professionals in with the correctional officers as well has also been proven to help reduce issues for people in custody, reduce suicide attempts, reduce assault, and just have better outcomes. So as we look to the future, we can't say that any model is going to be guaranteed to fix it. However, again, over the data from the last 50 years, this model that we're incorporating here has been proven worldwide to have better results. So that's the one that the city chose, and that's the one that we're implementing in the design.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So